Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the session on analysis of the general studies papers, which we are going to do over next few days. We are beginning with ethics, paper 4, and I'll be taking the discussion with respect to questions that have been asked in the past 3 years, 2020, 2021, and 2022. Last 3 years questions for ethics in governance portion. So I believe that some of you already are introduced to me. You have already attended my classes here, and we have a number of other students also, those who are possibly not our students, but general candidates for the exam, those who are joining this particular session through YouTube as well. Technology has done wonders in our life, and it allows us to reach a number of people across the world, not just the country. So I hope that for those people, those who are preparing for the examination, these sessions are going to be useful. The idea behind these sessions is not necessarily to tell you what the answer to the questions is, or is to not tell you that what UPSC is trying to ask, but rather to get an idea of how does one approach the topics, the questions that have been asked by UPSC in the past, and what are the lessons that we can learn from it, how we can use those concepts, how we can understand what is the requirement of the question, how we should be answering those questions in a proper format so that we can extract the maximum possible marks out of the examiner. So that is what is the objective of all of these sessions, and please don't think that these are classes. These are not classes. These are not sessions where we intend to cover the topics. These are not sessions where we intend to cover the basics, or for that matter, any of the advanced concepts as well. The objective of these sessions is to just expose you to how to approach answer writing specifically with respect to these topics which we'll be covering, and questions that have been asked by UPSC. As far as basics of answer writing are concerned, we'll be holding a session tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I believe that some of you may have been already communicated about the same. So we call it as the art of answer writing. We have been holding it for as long as I have been here in the organization. That has been 9 years now. This is my 10th year with the organization. So we've been holding that particular session for close to 9 years. Even before anyone was talking about answer writing, we realized that it is important to guide the aspirants as to how they should approach the entire exercise of answer writing. So we'll be discussing the basics with respect to answer writing tomorrow, but today's session or the other sessions which will be conducted at the same time for next few days is primarily to discuss the questions that have been asked by UPSC in the last 3 years. Right, so I welcome you all. Let's just quickly move on. For those who don't know about me, I'm the faculty. My name is Jatin. I'm the faculty for Indian Polity, Ethics and Internal Security here at Vision IAS. I've been teaching here at Vision IAS for last 9 years. Been associated with this esteemed organization for a really long time, and I'm an engineer who went on to become a development sector professional. Worked for almost 8 years in the development sector, and after that I moved on to become a lawyer, and I also continue to teach here at Vision IAS simultaneously. So let's just quickly talk about what are the topics which we will be touching upon as a part of our discussion, and these are also the topics that I end up taking here at Vision IAS in our foundation course. So that, and I believe that most of you have already attended the classes, or for some of you where the classes are still to happen, you will be encountering me, and we will be discussing about these topics in detail in our classes for ethics. So the topics that we will be touching upon, one is the aptitude and the foundational values of civil services. This is one of the most important topics from which every year you will find number of questions asked by UPSC since the pattern of the examination has changed in 2013. And then there are a number of values which have been mentioned here, which includes integrity, compassion, dedication to public service. It talks about non-partisanship, impartiality, etc. And direct questions have been asked from these particular topics in the past. Then I'll also be discussing about the topic of public service values and ethics in public administration. It covers a number of topics, especially some topics which have gained a lot of importance in the recent past are ethics in international relations. So ethical issues in international relations has been one very important topic on which UPSC has been asking questions every year now. Last 3 years we have seen that the number of questions which have been asked from this particular topic have increased. And perhaps because of whatever is happening around us in the globe, it is very important to see it from an ethical lens as well. And this topic has to be related along with whatever you study for the preparation of international relations portion as well. Right? So whatever is there in the international relations portion, you need to associate that with the ethical issues as far as ethics in international relations are concerned. Then apart from that, another topic on which UPSC has started to give a lot of importance in the recent past and which I expect is really important for this year's mains examination, considering whatever has happened in last 1 year in the country, is the topic of corporate governance. So there are a few questions that have been asked from this. Last year, in 2022, UPSC asked a question related to the corporate social responsibility as far as the corporate governance topic is concerned, but they have asked a number of questions related to this topic in the past as well. Another topic which has been of great value in the exam has been the topic of laws, rules, regulations as a source of ethical guidance. And even though the topic of ethical concerns and dilemmas in government and private institutions have not been asked directly in the theoretical portion of the paper, but it has wide application as far as the case studies are concerned. So I believe that some of you may have already attended the session by Aditya sir on the case studies and how to approach solving the case studies as far as the examination is concerned. So you may want to, in case if you haven't, you may want to see how the approach has to be with respect to ethics. I think that's a very useful session. And if you are targeting to do well in the exam, then ethics is something which you should definitely pay a lot of attention to. And then apart from that, the topic of probity in governance, there are a number of topics in this. UPSC has asked a number of questions from code of ethics, code of conduct in the past. In last 2-3 years, we haven't seen a question related to this particular topic, but it has been an all-time favorite of UPSC in the past, so maybe they will ask questions this year. I think another topic, two important topics which I think UPSC has not asked a lot of questions on in the past, which makes it all the more important for this year. Because if there is some topic which has been specifically mentioned in the syllabus, which UPSC hasn't asked about in the exam in the past, automatically becomes important for the students those who are appearing in this year's exam. So I think those topics are: one, the utilization of public funds, issues associated with utilization of public funds, the topic of work culture, and the topic of quality of service delivery as well. These are topics on which UPSC hasn't asked a lot of questions. Another topic which I would say which has been a favorite of UPSC has been the philosophical basis of governance and probity in governance as well, especially probity in governance. Right, so these are some of the important topics. Of course, I mean, these are the broad headings, this one, and this one, which I'll be covering with you here as a part of our questions. So let's just begin with our discussion talking about the questions that have been asked by the UPSC under each of these heads. But before I begin, two things that all of you must know. One, that in the mains examination in ethics, there are two sections. One is the theoretical section and the other one is the case study based section. Now, as far as the theoretical section is concerned, UPSC tends to ask pretty much straightforward questions in the theoretical portion. And I think if you cover the basic terms that have been mentioned in your syllabus, along with the definitions and issues associated with them and some examples of those concepts which have been mentioned in the syllabus, I think you can really do well in those particular questions. You can literally nail those questions. And this carries almost 50% weightage. So out of 250 marks questions which are asked by UPSC in the mains examination of ethics, almost 50% is dedicated to the theoretical question, the theoretical part of the exam. So in these 125 marks, you will find that the questions are relatively very straightforward. And all that you need to do is prepare basic content, which should not take a lot of time. In fact, if you only go through previous year questions, and I will show it to you that how certain questions which have been asked by UPSC in the past from certain topics are related to a number of questions that have been asked in the past. So जैसे 2022 के अंदर UPSC ने कुछ questions पूछे, वो straight as it is आप उनके आंसर लिखना स्टार्ट कर सकते थे एग्जामिनेशन के अंदर वॉक करते ही, if you had attempted the previous year questions. So the best source of preparing for the ethics portion, in fact, see, that's the best source for any topic, but I think for ethics, you don't need to refer any book, you don't need to refer any kind of text, notes, nothing. If you can just solve the last 10-year questions that have been asked by UPSC in GS paper 4, and by solving, I don't mean that you just look at those questions. By solving, I don't mean that you just look at model answers. By solving, it doesn't mean that you attend these sessions. By solving, I mean you genuinely write the answers to each of those questions. I can give it to you on any blank paper that you will end up securing more than 100 marks in ethics paper for sure. 101%. अगर आप case study और theoretical questions दोनों की practice कर लेते हैं, 101% you will do well in the ethics paper. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind. Reason for that is because not just in the theoretical section, but even in the case study section, UPSC continues to repeat the themes, repeat the problems, repeat the ethical dilemmas. 1 year, say for example, in the case study section, they may put you in a position as a district magistrate where you have been caught in a situation where there is a pressure which has been created by the citizens on some particular issue, and then there is some particular view which exists in your office, and then there is some particular view which exists in the political circles, and how do you reconcile that particular conflict which has been created due to these divergent ideas. And 1 year they will give you a similar kind of a question when you will be placed in a position in a corporate setup. 1 year they will give you a case study on the case of sexual assault in your office or sexual harassment in your office by one of your bright stars in the office, either when you are MD or CEO of a private company, and the other year they will repeat the same question, possibly in a different packaging, but the basic idea or the dilemma which will be there in the question will remain to be the same. You can go and observe this. If you closely observe questions that have been asked by UPSC from 2013 onwards till the present day exam, you will find that there is a lot of repetition of questions, there is a lot of repetition of themes which is taking place in theoretical and case study section year after year after year. Right? So these are some of the things which you need to keep in mind. अगर आप केवल ethics के पेपर करते हैं सॉल्व, मैं पक्का से आपको कह रहा हूं दैट यू विल डू वेल, है ना. तो उसके लिए बस इतनी तैयारी जरूरत है. इट मे सीम इजी, इट मे साउंड टू बी वेरी इजी, बट इट टेक्स अ बिट ऑफ एफर्ट, है ना. इट टेक्स अ बिट ऑफ एनर्जी, बट दिस इज समथिंग विच कैन बी डन इजिली इन विद इन 2 weeks. आप 2 हफ्ते के अंदर एथिक्स की तैयारी कर सकते हैं. एक पूरा जीएस का पेपर जो है आप 2 हफ्ते के अंदर कॉम्प्रिहेंसिवली प्रिपेयर कर सकते हैं अगर आप, इफ यू डिसाइड दैट आई हैव टू गो थ्रू each and every question that has been asked by UPSC in the last 10 years. Right? So that is the importance of previous year questions as far as the ethics portion is concerned. As far as theoretical portion, ethics and governance related की जो हम बात करेंगे, एक तो ethics and governance का direct relationship है theoretical questions as it is पूछे जाते हैं. Secondly, even in the case study sections, if you develop a knack for understanding these topics from the very basics, ethics, in governance, you would be able to apply these concepts in your case study portion, applied portion as well, and you will be able to secure good marks. Right? So that is what we need to keep in mind. I'll keep discussing what should be the approach and how do we tackle certain types of questions. But primarily, I can tell you one thing, most of the questions are very easy. If you just read them properly, if you decipher their meaning properly, I think 50% of the job is done. And then rest of the 50% is just putting down your thoughts on paper, putting down basic concepts on paper, which you must have already gone through multiple times if you have revised the previous year questions. So let's start with our discussion. We will start with the questions related to foundational values of civil services to begin with. The first question which we will discuss is the question which was asked in last year's examination. So the question was that you have to write short notes. Now see how short these notes have to be, literally 30 words each. So your notes have to be that short that the examiner should just blink an eye and should read your note. Right? That is what is the expectation. And see, you must also understand, if you end up writing a lot, one is that the examiner may deduct your marks for unnecessarily going beyond the word limit, which has been happening to a lot of candidates. We have seen that a lot of candidates have been getting negative marks as well. One is that, and the second is that you will waste your time and you will not be able to finish the paper. The biggest problem that we have seen with respect to ethics paper year after year, biggest mistake which candidates make is that they are not able to manage their time properly in the ethics paper. And that happens to 90% of the candidates writing the exam. Those who are able to tackle it do well in the ethics paper. So either candidates end up spending a lot of time on the case study portion, or they end up spending a lot of time on the theoretical questions. So both you have to balance the time. Both you have to divide the time properly is what you need to keep in mind. Right? So let's begin. The first one is write short notes on each of these words, each of these concepts in 30 words. Right? And this is like, there are 5 things which have been given here, 5 concepts which have been mentioned here. Each one of them is 2 marks, which is 10 marks in total. Right? Each one of them is 2 marks. Can you tell them that after 5:30 no one enters? Okay, please communicate kar dijiyega. So short notes on these particular concepts. First one is constitutional morality. Now all of us know what constitutional morality is. Constitutional morality as a concept means steadfast adherence to values and principles of the Constitution, irrespective of situation and circumstances. There have been various court cases in which the Supreme Court has discussed this idea of constitutional morality, or relied upon this particular idea to give importance to the values and the principles of the Indian Constitution. For example, if we talk about one of the most famous cases, the Keshwananda Bharti case. In Keshwananda Bharti case, the parliament, as we know, tried to expand its powers to amend the constitution to make them into unlimited powers by its powers under 368. And the Supreme Court says that, see, you may have powers to amend any part of the Indian constitution, including the fundamental rights. But at the same time, you do not have powers to expand your amendment powers in an unlimited manner through the provisions of the constitution itself. Why? Because we follow the idea of constitutional supremacy in India. We do not follow the idea of parliamentary supremacy in India. Since the constitution is supreme, the powers of the parliament must be guided according to the constitution of India itself. Right? And a number of other cases after that, whether it is the Sabrimala case or whether it is the case with respect to decriminalizing section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, or whether it is the Vishakha versus State of Rajasthan. In any of these big cases, Supreme Court has relied upon the idea of constitutional morality. But this is not polity. So we don't have to write cases here. We have to talk about it in terms of ethics. So, but at the same time, we have just 30 words. What all do we write and what all do we don't write? Often when students start their preparation, they come to me and they don't know what is to be written. But by the time they end their preparation and when they are walking into the mains examination hall, they actually don't know what all we should not write, because they have so much to write, because you have gained so much knowledge. So how do we tackle something like this? So I have just put some thoughts related to this, as far as, let's say, when we talk about the idea of, and now see,
as I was telling you, similar PYQs have been asked on the same themes by UPSC earlier as well. In 2019, they asked a question on constitutional morality, and in 2022, they asked a 2-marker on constitutional morality. In 2022, they give the term conflict of interest, and they have asked questions related to conflict of interest in 2015, 17, 18. They give the concept of probity in governance or probity in public life, and they have already asked a number of questions related to this in the past. See how easy the paper is if you actually just go through the previous year questions and solve them properly. When people say that no, questions don't repeat at UPSC, well, maybe the questions don't repeat necessarily, but the themes do. And in ethics paper, a lot of times questions also get repeated. But you have to be smart enough, you have to be intelligent enough to go out there and to find these questions and to solve them. If you do that, then you can imagine how much time you can save in the exam. So let's start with this, constitutional morality. Steadfast adherence to core principles of constitution. And see, you should not be wasting words in such a question. You should not write constitutional morality means. He knows you are writing about constitutional morality. Please don't waste your words. You have only 30 words. It's a very precious resource. Don't waste them. Don't write it means. Just simply start. Steadfast adherence to core principles of constitution in a democracy. I have written here constitutional morality is not just limited to, you may just write down, it is not just limited to following the constitutional provisions in its literal sense, but rather includes a commitment to an inclusive democratic political process in which the individual and collective interests of the society are satisfied. You may skip this line and you may write that constitutional morality can be seen in a number of values such as equity, justice, liberty, fraternity, which are mentioned in our constitution and which was the objective of the constitution makers, of the forefathers of this country, so that we can make a better society to live in. That is it. There is no scope for writing anything else. 30 words will be consumed. It is only a 2-marker. You will only get 1 mark for writing this out of 2. I doubt that the examiner will give you 2. Maybe he can give you 1.5. But don't waste a lot of time. You can save this time in some other question. Very simple. Then let's look at the next term. It says conflict of interest. What is conflict of interest? Conflict of interest is a situation in which when a person's professional duties, when a person's duties that he needs to perform as a result of occupying a particular office clashes with his personal interest. That is what conflict of interest is. So if I am a judge and one of my relatives is an accused in a particular case, I have a conflict of interest. You should give this kind of an illustration, but in brief, a judge whose relative is participating or whose relative is an accused in a particular case. That is what you can write about conflict of interest, just as an illustration, right? So conflict of interest refers to a situation in which a person in decision-making position has private or personal interests which are sufficient enough to appear to influence the objective exercise of a person's official duties. In situations of conflict of interest, an official's private interest could improperly influence the performance of official duties. आप ये भी लिख सकते हो. You don't need to write all of this. You can simply write that when a person's professional duties conflict or they come in some kind of a contradiction with one's personal interest, it is conflict of interest. And then what are the other things that you can write apart from this very basic definition? You must either write importance of resolving conflict of interest, or you must write about dangers of conflict of interest for a public servant, or you must write about how to resolve conflict of interest. इन्हीं में से तो 3 चीजें कोई लिख सकते हैं. We can write about the importance of resolving it. We can talk about the dangers associated with conflicts of interest. And third, you may write down about the solutions. That choice is yours. If I were in your place, I would write about the dangers which are created due to conflict of interest. So I'll just give a small subheading there. Dangers due to conflict of interest affects impartiality, affects public trust, creates a feeling of enmity, bitterness, leads to injustice. That's it. Small things have to be mentioned, right? You can use those 30 words very wisely if you want to use them very wisely. You don't need to write long expressions. अगर आपने एक sentence लिख दिया, तो then all your 30 words are consumed and your time is wasted. इन topics पे आपको पहले से practice करके जानी पड़ेगी ये. You have to practice this beforehand. Don't expect that this will happen in the exam, that within those half a minute that you are going to get to read this question, you're going to think of what I'm going to write. You have to practice this beforehand. All the candidates, those whom we have seen doing well in the mains examination in the past, are the ones, those who had thoroughly gone through previous year questions and those who had attempted writing answers to questions, not just previous years, but through test series or through some other means as well. And test yourself in the examination hall. A lot of you may want to write these tests while sitting at home. Don't do that. Even if you don't have some other place to go to, say for example a library, or if you haven't joined a test series, that is also fine. I am not saying that you should join a test series necessarily. Everything is available in the market. Now all the institutes, test series, their questions, everything is freely available in the market. You just need to get a photostat of that. But don't attempt them sitting in the comfort of your home. Put yourself in a new place. It could be a coffee shop, it could be a relative's place, it could be a friend's place, it could be a restaurant, it could be any place, it could be a park, it could be any place. But put yourself in different situations. That will help you to train your mind. That will help you to overcome the anxiety of writing these papers in different environments. You should become immune to your surroundings. When you are writing the answers in the exam hall, it should feel that you are alone there. No one else is there. How do you train your mind to get there? By writing in different circumstances. Park में जाके लिखो, जहां पे 50 लोग आके देखें कि ये क्या कर रहा है, देखने दो. But you just keep doing your work. You have to become literally like a monk if you have to do well in this examination. तपस्या है, इसमें कोई डाउट नहीं है. और तपस्या जो है वो अपने आप को दुख पहुंचा के नहीं होता है हमेशा, है ना. तपस्या का मतलब ये नहीं है कि मैं कमरे में बंद कर लूं अपने आप को. That's somehow the wrong meaning of, I don't know how to say कि तपस्या का इंग्लिश क्या होगा, but whatever, you know, I don't think there is, साधना कहते हैं हम, but there is actually no equivalent of sadhana in the Western world. That's the truth. Anyway, so the point that I am trying to say is that you should sit down and try to give yourself different conditions. Different conditions में लिखिएगा ये answers. Test कीजिएगा अपने आप को. Anyway, so harms of conflict of interest, it may lead to misutilization of public funds, corruption, trust deficit, lack of objectivity. That's it. Or you may write down how to resolve conflict of interest. Or you may write down about what are the ways in order to resolve the conflict of interest, or what are the advantages of resolving conflict of interest, whichever way you may want to look at it. But not a lot of words. Simple things have to be written. Can we move further? Right? Very simple things as of now. I'll take questions also from you, but let me just cover like one question and then I can take some questions from you. Another one was probity in public life. Again, can we write all of this? Not possible. Quality of having strong moral values and principles such as honesty and integrity in governance processes. That's it. And then think of something. You may write about importance of probity in governance. You may talk about measures to ensure probity in governance. You may talk about challenges with respect to ensuring probity in governance. You may write possibly importance of probity, and then you may write 2 points. You may write measures to ensure probity, and you may write 3 points. You can do that as well. You may write importance of probity, and you may write about challenges of probity. So what is probity we have discussed, right? What is the importance of probity in governance? It ensures effective utilization of resources, ensures accountability, maintains public trust, right? Helps in building public trust, prevents misuse of the wide discretionary powers, prevents corruption. What are measures to ensure probity? All those measures that are there to achieve good governance, whether it is RTI, whether it is citizen charter, whether it is social audit, whether it is the grievance redressal mechanism, whether it is transparency, publicly available data, all of these are ideas of probity in governance. Right? So nothing complicated, just write as simple. We have seen that candidates, those who are doing well in ethics paper, are the ones those who are writing very simple answers. ऐसा आंसर जो कि एग्जामिनर पढ़े और उसको एक बारी में समझ में आ जाए. घुमा घुमा के गोल गोल चीजें मत लिखिएगा एथिक्स के पेपर में. एथिक्स का पेपर है, आइडिया है, थॉट है, उसको बस बहुत सिंपल तरीके से लिखिएगा. जितना सिंपल हो सकता है उतना लिखिए. There is no need to complicate things. There is no need to have great command over language. Ethics is one paper, in my opinion, which is the easiest yet the toughest to master. Easiest because if you practice, then बहुत ज्यादा इधर उधर से नहीं पूछेगा. But toughest because it requires you to sit down and practice. Because it requires that effort. Right? Then next one. What are challenges of digitalization? So if I were in your place, I would write importance of digitalization, efficient public delivery, greater reach to the masses, transparency, accountability, and then I would write challenges due to digitalization. Or if you don't like that approach, you may just simply write challenges of digitalization, and that also again you may start with digitalization has helped in governance processes in various ways, including ensuring accountability, transparency, etc. But some challenges are, and then just write down 3-4 challenges. That's it. Give the context and then write down 3-4 challenges. No need for introductions in these questions. Ethics के question में, theoretical questions में आपके पास introductions लिखने का scope नहीं है बहुत ज़्यादा. Your introduction cannot be more than 10-15 words, if at all it has to be there. And your introduction has to answer the question and should not be rhetoric. फालतू वही बात मत कहिएगा जो question के अंदर लिखी हुई है. You getting what I am trying to say? I'll show examples of that to you. ये तो बहुत ही छोटे questions हैं, but I think I always say this, that to write briefly is the toughest thing. To put things briefly is the toughest thing. I always give this example that once Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam was called to give a lecture. He was told by the organizer that, sir, you will have 1 hour to speak. But due to some problems, due to a number of other speakers also and scheduling and all of that, at the end, they tell Dr. Kalam that, sir, we are really sorry, but we only have 15 minutes for you to speak. Now he has to compress his 1 hour speech and the ideas that he has to discuss within 15 minutes, in which he possibly would be taking questions as well. He said that this is the toughest thing that I have done. Because when you gave me to write down a 1 hour speech, it was much easier. And now I'm realizing I have to compress all those ideas in 15 minutes. That means that I have to choose which ones to speak about and which ones not to speak about, and how much detail I should be talking about certain things or not. So brevity is not that easy to achieve. It only comes with practice. A lot of students come to me and they tell me that we are not able to manage time in the exam, in tests, etc. That happens because, one, you are not in practice. The more you practice, you will become acquainted with that. And second, and a very important issue is that you must write answers. You must evaluate your own answers and see where I can cut down. Not just in ethics, but in all the other papers, including your optional preparation as well. See and analyze. केवल लिख के उसको फेंक मत दीजिएगा साइड में. उसको खुद एनालाइज कीजिएगा, देखिएगा what you have written. क्या मैं इसको और कट शॉर्ट कर सकता था और क्या मैं इसमें कुछ और एक नया आइडिया ऐड कर सकता था. That is what your approach should be. Do that iteration 3, 4, 5 times with answers that you have written for 10, 15 papers, and believe me, 101%, you would not need to go to any teacher, any mentor, anyone to ask what a good answer looks like, because you would have written your own good answer. But you must also have the power of observation. You must go through previous year topper copies. You must look at how they are writing the answers and observe them very keenly. For those of you who are starting the mains preparation now after writing the prelims examination, or just otherwise as well, I would sincerely recommend that you sit down with topper copies. Yesterday, I talked to quite a few students, candidates who are preparing for the exam from my college juniors, and I was talking to them, and all of them had this doubt that how do we now approach things once that we have given the prelims and we are qualifying this. We have done a bit of preparation of mains earlier, but specifically mains oriented preparation कैसे करें? सबसे पहले ये जानिएगा कि मेंस की प्रिपरेशन नॉलेज एसिमुलेशन नहीं है, नॉलेज एक्यूमुलेशन नहीं है. मेंस की प्रिपरेशन, मेंस प्रिपरेशन is to ensure that you write answers. 3 घंटे में लिख पाए जो नॉलेज है. नॉलेज तो बहुत है, क्या करेंगे नॉलेज का? अब अप्लाई कीजिएगा. तो अप्लाई करने से पहले सीखिएगा कि और लोग कैसे लिख रहे हैं. तो रोज अगले 1 महीने के लिए, 15 दिन के लिए, 20 दिन के लिए, जितना भी आप टाइम आपको लगता है, यू शुड सिट डाउन फॉर half an hour to 1 hour with topper answer copies and see what they are writing. Not the content also only, but also their approach. It may be any topper. You can pick up 3, 4 toppers, 5 toppers, 10 toppers. Don't confuse yourself with a lot of them, because everyone would have a different writing style, but maybe you can look at few of them in the first 5 days, 1 week, and then after that choose that, okay, this seems to be very close to how I would write. And let me observe more of this. Observe कीजिएगा. Power of observance. It is not very easy. आपको थोड़ा सा एफर्ट लगाना पड़ेगा. नोटिस कीजिएगा वो कैसे लिख रहे हैं. मैं होता तो कैसे लिखता, मैं होती तो कैसे लिखती. हाउ आई वुड हैव रिटन दिस पर्टिकुलर आइडिया इन माई लैंग्वेज. मैं क्या एग्जाम्पल देती क्वेश्चन में, वॉट एग्जाम्पल आई वुड हैव गिवन. यू शुड डू दैट. सी हाउ दे आर मेकिंग द हेडिंग्स, सी हाउ दे आर राइटिंग द पॉइंट्स. Not just content, I'm telling you again and again, not just content, but the style of writing, the presentation, very important in this exam, really important. आप किसी भी टॉपर की कॉपी उठा के देख लीजिएगा, आपको उसमें प्रेजेंटेशन शैबी मिल जाए, या आपको उसमें हैंडराइटिंग इलेजिबल मिल जाए, या आपको उसके अंदर ऐसा लगे कि ग्रामेटिकली इतना ज्यादा ड्रास्टिकली गलत है, या आपको कोई ऐसी कॉपी मिल जाए जिसमें कि क्वेश्चन कुछ और है और आंसर कुछ और लिखा हुआ है. यू विल नॉट फाइंड एनीथिंग लाइक दैट. व्हाई इज इट द केस? बिकॉज you can't get success, you can't become a topper if you are having that kind of a style, you know? So you have to avoid these mistakes. We'll discuss about these mistakes tomorrow, but anyway, right? So digitization has created distinction between haves and have-nots in terms of digital divide, anonymization of citizens problems. So this is also one way you could have just written down 3-4 points only, simply challenges of digitization. Anyway, then next is devotion to duty. What is devotion to duty? Devotion to duty is nothing but essentially being able to apply or to give your time, attention and self entirely to a particular activity, cause or objective. See, duty doesn't necessarily means duty as a IPS officer or as a civil servant. Devotion to duty could be that you have been asked by your mother to cook today's food, and you ensure that when I will cook food, I will cook it with my complete attention. I will not be distracted. I will ensure that I'm thinking about it when I'm doing it. I'll be mindful. That is what devotion to duty is. Constantly watching your thoughts, constantly watching yourself. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Watching yourself. Watching yourself means assume yourself to be a third person and then observing yourself. Right? Assume yourself to be a third person and observing yourself. That is what is called as devotion to duty, or not devotion to duty, observance. है ना? So devotion to duty is essentially when being it is a commitment, passion, personal urge to do something without any external force or power or to enforce that particular urge. Then you may write down importance of devotion to duty, or you may write down some example. You may talk about devotion of duty of Mahatma Gandhi to the cause of freedom and upliftment of the masses. You may talk about the idea of possibly Gita, where Krishna is telling Arjun that your only objective should be to do your duties without any expectations. Neither carry out your duty with the expectation of getting hell or heaven, nor carry out your duty with the expectation of getting pleasure out of it or pain out of it. Don't do your duty with the objective of making money out of it. Don't do your duty even to achieve me. He's telling that even if you have to achieve the supreme, then also to achieve the supreme as well, that if you do your duty, that is not the way to do your duty. It should be completely selfless, completely removed from any kind of expectations. You do your duty because it is your duty to do your duty. It is your dharma to do your duty. That is it. You may talk about Buddha's views on this. You may talk about Immanuel Kant's views on this. You may talk about what some IAS officer or some person who has inspired you in your life would have looked at. It could be anyone. It could be anything. But you could write an example, or you could write about importance of it, whichever way you may want to approach it. Right? So devotion of duty. Right? So बड़ी सारी चीजें लिखी हैं इसमें कि that the very purpose of the civil services is to improve the lives of the people, to deal with adverse situations when there is lack of resources. Civil servants enjoy huge discretionary powers, so they must not use it for personal gain. They must be only driven by their duty and not the objective, the outcomes or the results as such. What they will get. Duty, devotion to duty has to be selfless. If it is selfish, it is not devotion. You're not devoted to it. Then that means that there is something which is attached to it. The moment that thing will go, you will lose your devotion to duty. अगर डिवोशन टू ड्यूटी इससे है कि मेरे को इससे खुशी मिलती है, कई बार आपको अपनी खुशी के विरुद्ध भी काम करना पड़ता है. यू हैव टू वर्क अगेंस्ट इट एज वेल इन दी सर्विस. आपको बॉस ने बोल दिया कि मैं तुम्हें नोट्स भेज रहा हूं कुछ जो कि प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफिस से आए हैं या जहां से भी सीएमओ से आए हैं, एंड यू हैव टू मेक अ समरी ऑफ इट. आपको नहीं अच्छा लग रहा, तो अब आप क्या बोलेंगे कि अब मैं आई एम नॉट डिवोटेड टू माई ड्यूटी बिकॉज आई एम नॉट फीलिंग हैप्पी ओवर इट. डिवोशन टू ड्यूटी हैज टू बी सेल्फलेस. And selfless doesn't only mean monetary gain. Selfless means something beyond it. Without any joy, without any anger, without any expectation of grief or anything. That is what is devotion to duty. बहुत deep meaning है. इतना आसान नहीं है devotion to duty समझना. You have to devote yourself to a cause completely. See, if you write ideas like this, philosophical ideas like this, you will do well in the exam. And there is ample of this philosophy which is available to us through various sources. Buddha's teachings. What is it? Philosophy only. Any of the religious teachings, say for example, if you believe in the Mahabharata or Gita, if you read any of those verses, any of the chapters, you will find so much of ultimately it is all philosophy only. What the Vedas are mentioning, or if you read Swami Vivekananda's thoughts, you will get a lot of ideas. It's important, you should read a bit. You can't expect to do well in the ethics paper simply by adopting a complete mechanical approach. You should have some good thoughts as well. It could be someone like Swami Vivekananda. I read a lot of Jiddu Krishnamurti, J. Krishnamurti. You may just go and search his name on YouTube or on Google. You'll find such great thoughts, great philosophy which he has talked about. Moral thinkers, philosophers could include possibly Mahatma Gandhi's ideas. It could include possibly ideas of John Rawls or Jeremy Bentham or Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, and so many other people those who have talked about various aspects. So कुछ तो थोड़ा बहुत आपको पढ़ना पड़ेगा, कोई भी जो चीज जिससे आप रिलेट करते हैं, जिससे कि एग्जामिनर को लगे कि हां कुछ तो अच्छा लिखा है इसने, वही मैकेनिकल घिसी पिटी बकवास नहीं लिख दी. Those people who are doing well are the ones, those who have some idea of getting in certain aspects into their answers, right? So this is about devotion to duty, etc. We'll move on to the next question, but before I move on to the next question, any doubts still here? Any one of you has any questions still here related to what we have discussed or ideas that we have discussed till here? आगे मत भागिएगा. Yes. What is constitutionalism? No, sir, that is not what constitutionalism is. So before asking that question, you must know the meaning to constitutionalism, na? How are you asking me that question when you are saying that what is the difference between these two terms? No. No, sir, it's not the same. Constitutionalism, apple and fruit are same, but are they the same? Constitutionalism is an idea which says that the powers of the state should be limited. The powers of the government should be limited. And that is what is the objective of any constitution. So, when we say constitutional morality, sticking to the basic values and the principles of the constitution. You achieve constitutionalism through constitutional morality. That's it. Clear to everyone? Yes. I'll discuss that. So this must be a common question to many of you, that while writing the answers, I don't know how to begin. Have you observed topper copies of copies of toppers? Have you observed them? You haven't. You haven't. You see, you must also think one more thing, that what we believe is not always true. So you believe that I have, but you haven't. If you had, you wouldn't have asked me this question. So first, go back and observe topper copies. You will get some idea of how they are beginning their answers. One. Second, अभी इस वाले questions में तो खैर there is no point of discussing about how do we begin the answers, but I'll come to that question in a bit. But before that, what I suggested, observe topper copies. 15, 20, 30 days कीजिएगा इसको. और observe means observe. खोदिए उन्हें. जब तक उनको ब्रेक डाउन नहीं करेंगे तब तक समझ नहीं आएगा. कोशिश कीजिएगा वो. I'll discuss this. Right? Now, let's proceed further. So the next question is, identify 5, this was a question that was asked in 2021, identify 5 ethical traits on which one can plot the performance of a civil servant, justify their inclusion in the matrix. So if you had to assess the performance of a civil servant, what are 5 ethical traits, it says, on which you can judge the performance of a civil servant? Now see, there are multiple ways of judging the performance of a civil servant. How many kilometers of roads you have made? How much revenue you were able to generate in your department or in your corporation which you are the MD of? How many toilets you were able to build? But are these the performance indicators which this is talking about? So first understand that this is talking about something else. And that could be the introduction for your answer, sir, in this question. That performance of a civil servant can be judged on basis of several objective criteria, such as number of schools made, kilometers of road made, amount of money earned, number of people who have been reached. But these should not be the only basis for judging the performance of a civil servant, since he has an ethical duty towards the society as well. He has certain ethical traits also which he needs to show in his work. Therefore, some of these ethical indicators could be, there is your introduction, sir. So if you think about the question and if you think about what the question is saying, you will be ready with the introduction for your answer. Right? So it says that identify 5 ethical traits on which one can plot the performance of a civil servant, justify their inclusion in the matrix. So first you talk about what are these ethical traits, just explain them very briefly, and then you have to talk about their importance, justification of those ethical traits. Now what could be the ethical traits on the basis of which a performance of a civil servant could be judged? Some examples. But how do you measure selflessness, sir? Can you measure selflessness? Discipline could be one. Very good. How do you measure courage? Huh? Impartiality and non-partisanship. How do you measure impartiality? Objectivity, transparency. See, think about it. उसने ना इसी क्वेश्चन के साथ एक और क्वेश्चन दिया था उसी साल, और वो ये था, आइडेंटिफाई 10 एसेंशियल वैल्यूज दैट आर नीडेड टू बी एन इफेक्टिव पब्लिक सर्वेंट. अब मुझे बताओ पहले और दूसरे क्वेश्चन में फर्क क्या है? यहां पे वो ऐसी कुछ एथिकल वैल्यूज की बात कर रहा है जो टेंजिबल हो. टेंजिबल सोचिएगा क्या हो सकता है? ट्रांसपेरेंसी टेंजिबल हो सकती है. आपने कितने एफर्ट्स किए अपने ऑफिस के सारा डेटा और रिकॉर्ड पब्लिक में डालने के लिए? इज दिस मेजरेबल और नॉट? इज दिस एन एथिकल ट्रेट और नॉट? अकाउंटेबिलिटी. हाउ मेनी ऑडिट सेशंस हैव यू हेल्ड विद द पब्लिक, विद द एनजीओज? इज दिस एन एथिकल ट्रेट? इज दिस मेजरेबल? थिंक लाइक दैट. क्वेश्चन की डिमांड देखिएगा. मैं यही समझा रहा हूं आपको. आधे लोग जो हैं वो इसलिए इस एग्जाम में अच्छा नहीं करते क्योंकि वो अपनी धुन में चलते हैं. वो अपने थॉट प्रोसेस से इतने ब्लाइंडेड हैं कि उनकी नॉलेज उनको ब्लाइंड कर रही है. नॉलेज इज ब्लाइंडिंग देम. इट इज मेकिंग देम लिटरली नॉट सी बियॉन्ड देयर नॉलेज. एग्जामिनर को आपकी नॉलेज से घंटा फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. बात समझिएगा. ये एग्जामिनर वॉन्ट्स टू नो वेदर यू कैन इवन लिसन एंड ऑब्जर्व इन द फर्स्ट प्लेस. तुम कैसे सिविल सर्वेंट बनोगे जब आदमी आके बोल रहा है कि सर मेरे को खाने को खाना नहीं मिल रहा है ना, और तुम उसे बोलो कि अरे सिनेमा देखे कि नहीं, सिनेमा खोला है हमने तुम्हारे लिए, सिनेमा क्यों नहीं देखते जाके? बात समझ रहे हो मेरी? आदमी बोल रहा है सर मेरे यहां पे पिछले 15 दिन से पानी नहीं आया. वो बोल रहे यार आईपीएल की टिकट करा देता हूं तुम्हारी, मैच देख के रहो. आप अगर सुनने और ऑब्जर्व करने के केपेबल नहीं है तो आप कैसे सिविल सर्वेंट बनेंगे? किसकी सर्विस करने वाले हैं आप? अपनी. तो ऑब्जर्व. तो वो कह रहा है आइडेंटिफाई 5 एथिकल ट्रेट्स ऑन विच वन कैन प्लॉट द परफॉर्मेंस ऑफ अ सिविल सर्वेंट. एथिकल ट्रेट्स ट्रांसपेरेंसी हो सकता है, अकाउंटेबिलिटी हो सकता है, फाइनेंशियल इंटेग्रिटी हो सकता है. उस तरीके के एथिकल ट्रेट्स की बात करनी है और फिर उनकी इंक्लूजन जस्टिफाई कीजिएगा प्लीज. इंक्लूजन हैज टू बी जस्टिफाइड. व्हाई इज ट्रांसपेरेंसी सो इंपॉर्टेंट? प्रिवेंट्स, हेल्प्स इन प्रिवेंटिंग करप्शन, मेंटेन्स पब्लिक ट्रस्ट. 2 पॉइंट लिख दिए, बस खत्म. इतना ही लिखना है. इंपॉर्टेंस. Then next, second trait, you write accountability. Third trait, you write financial integrity or whatever. So think in that direction. Question समझिएगा. Question में ही आंसर छुपा है. आप आंसर कहीं और ढूंढ रहे हैं. आप कहां ढूंढ रहे हैं? अपनी किताबों में. आप कहां ढूंढ रहे हैं? अपने नोट्स में. That is where you are looking for the answers ना. आप सोच रहे हैं टीचर ने क्या पढ़ाया था वो लिख देता हूं. क्वेश्चन हैज टू बी ट्रीटेड देयर इन द एग्जाम ओनली. तो आपको उसके लिए अपने आप को ट्रेन करना होगा. मेरे को बार बार स्टूडेंट आके बोलते हैं सर हम सोच नहीं पा रहे हैं. अरे सोच इसलिए नहीं पा रहे हो क्योंकि आप सोचना चाहते नहीं हो, आप कोशिश नहीं कर रहे हो, आप देखना नहीं चाहते हो, आप केवल ब्लाइंडेड हो बस कि नोट्स में जो आया है वहीं से आ जाए बस सवाल, हमें जितना पढ़ाया है उससे आ जाए सवाल किसी तरीके से. भगवान प्रसाद चढ़ाऊंगा तेरे को जाके, मन्नत मांगी थी वहां पे जाके धागा बांध दूंगा, धागा खोल दूंगा. अबे ऐसे थोड़ी ना होता है एग्जाम. वो आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछ रहा है और उस क्वेश्चन का आंसर देना है, और उसके लिए नॉलेज की नहीं इंटेलिजेंस की जरूरत है. इंटेलिजेंस बोले तो देख के ऑब्जर्व करने की जरूरत है, समझने की जरूरत है कि अगला आदमी बोल क्या रहा है. व्हाट इज ही इवन आस्किंग, वो चाहता क्या है मुझसे, मैं अपना ही कुछ लिख दूं. एथिकल ट्रेट, हाँ मेरे को सर ने बताए थे एथिकल ट्रेट. कंपैशन, कंपैशन कैसे मेजर करेगा भाई? इन्होंने बोला सेल्फलेसनेस, कैसे मेजर करेगा सेल्फलेसनेस? कोई मीटर मिलता है तो मेरे को बताइएगा प्लीज सेल्फलेसनेस का, मैं लगाना चाहूंगा अपने ऊपर. समझिए क्वेश्चन क्या कह रहा है. सबसे बड़ा लेसन तो यही है, मैं बता रहा हूं आपको. ये सारी डिस्कशन जो है इसी बेस पे है. क्वेश्चन को समझिए. क्वेश्चन ही नहीं समझते लोग, और लोग पेपर पे पेपर देते जाते हैं, अटेम्प्ट पे अटेम्प्ट पे अटेम्प्ट, और नॉलेज गेन करते जाते हैं, किताबें पढ़ते जाते हैं, बोलते हैं अरे ये वाले इंस्टीट्यूट में अच्छे से नहीं पढ़ाया. अबे तुमने अच्छे से पढ़ा नहीं, पढ़ाया तो कहीं पे भी नहीं जा रहा कुछ. और उस पढ़ाई का कर क्या लोगे जब उसको अप्लाई नहीं करना था तुम्हें, तो क्या फायदा है उसका? अब मैं तो नहीं तैयारी करवा सकता ऐसे. मैं तो आप सब मेनी ऑफ यू हैव अटेंडेड माय एथिक्स क्लासेस, मैंने तो नहीं डिस्कस किया 5 एथिकल ट्रेड्स दैट कैन बी मेजर्ड. अब ये तो तुम्हारे अंदर इंटेलिजेंस इतनी होनी चाहिए ना कि तुम इसको, इतना सिंपल सी चीज है, इसके लिए तुम्हें कोचिंग की जरूरत है क्या? और कोचिंग की जरूरत है तो मैं प्रार्थना करता हूं कि तुम्हारा सिलेक्शन ना हो, क्योंकि देश का बेड़ा गर्क हो जाएगा अगर तुम सर्विस में पहुंच गए तो. क्योंकि तुम इतनी सिंपल चीज नहीं समझ पा रहे हो, तुम क्या पॉलिसी बनाओगे? मेरी बात समझिएगा जो मैं कह रहा हूं. प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड द क्वेश्चंस, रीड द क्वेश्चंस प्रॉपर्ली, उनको बार बार रीड कीजिएगा. ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट ही इज आस्किंग. और ये कोई रॉकेट साइंस नहीं है, राइट? एनीवे, सो यू मे राइट ऑल ऑफ दोस. मॉरल इंटेग्रिटी, फाइनेंशियल इंटेग्रिटी कुड बी वन, राइट? एबिलिटी टू टेक डिसीजंस कुड बी वन, एक्सेट्रा. बट यहां पे भी देखिए मैंने बहुत सारी चीजें जो लिखी हुई हैं, दे मे नॉट बी मेजरेबल एज सच. एटीट्यूड टुवर्ड्स वीकर सेक्शंस, बट हाउ कैन यू मेजर इट? थ्रू नंबर ऑफ फील्ड विजिट्स दैट हैव बीन मेड. सो थिंक अबाउट इट. आप कुछ चीजों को क्वांटिफाई भी कर सकते हैं, बट क्वांटिफिकेशन का तरीका तो बताइए फिर. कम से कम क्वांटिफिकेशन का तरीका बताइए. तो पब्लिक इंटरैक्शन could be one way of, or reaching out to the masses could be an ethical. Compassion आप लिख सकते हैं, but then you have to justify कैसे होगा ये measure compassion. वो बहुत दया करता है. अरे तो कोई स्केल है तो बताइए कितना दया का स्केल है उसका, 0 to 100. So there is a way which has to be measuring it, right? Anyway, so you have to write all of that. Then the next one is identify the 10 essential values that are needed to be an effective public servant. 10 essential values that are needed to be an effective public servant. Describe the ways and means to prevent non-ethical behavior in the public servants. अब देखिए, here tell me something in this answer. Can you write down the values and then explain the meaning of those values? Do you have that much scope? क्या करना चाहिए इस क्वेश्चन में? राइट डाउन 10 वैल्यूज. पहले तो 10 वैल्यूज पता होनी चाहिए उसके लिए. 10 वैल्यूज ही सोच रहे हैं एग्जाम में. कंपैशन, इंटेग्रिटी, हाँ इंटेग्रिटी 2 तो हो गए, 8 बचे हैं. ये प्रिपेयर करके जाना पड़ेगा पहले से. इफ यू हैव अटेंडेड माय एथिक्स क्लासेस, आई टोल्ड यू ऑल्सो that think of values which are important to you, why they are important to you, what do those values mean to you, who are the people who have inspired you to adopt those values in your life, right? So you have to write down 10 values. What else? और क्या करना होगा फिर? What else? Right? Justification you may give. Should you write down the definition of those values is my question. Definition लिख डाली तो फिर क्या करोगे उसके बाद? फिर तो टाइम ही खत्म हो जाएगा. Question का टाइम खत्म. So write down either justification or importance of those values, and that too in just 1 or 2-3 words. ज़्यादा नहीं, मतलब उसको बहुत ज़्यादा, 1 sentence or maybe just a bit. So it says identify 10 essential values that are needed to be an effective public servant, and then you must also relate it to. अब देखिए क्वेश्चन में ही हिंट छुपा है, क्वेश्चन में ही हिंट छुपा है. हाउ दोज वैल्यूज हेल्प यू टू बी एन इफेक्टिव पब्लिक सर्वेंट, ये होना चाहिए आपके उन वैल्यूज के साथ लिखा हुआ. ट्रांसपेरेंसी, हेल्प इन अचीविंग पब्लिक फेथ, ending corruption, improving efficiency. Just saying as an example, right? Compassion helps in addressing problems of people in an effective manner or whatever. And then you may give some example. For example, Mahatma Gandhi. For example, UPSC, whatever. एग्जाम्पल भी तो लिखिए. देखिए बस इतना ही एग्जाम्पल लिखना है. ट्रांसपेरेंसी फॉर एग्जाम्पल यूपीएससी, बस. अकाउंटेबिलिटी फॉर एग्जाम्पल अंडर एमजी नरेगा. यू गेटिंग माई पॉइंट? सो थिंक हाउ यू कैन एक्सप्रेस मोर इन लेस नंबर ऑफ वर्ड, बट यू विल हैव टू डू दिस प्रैक्टिस बिफोर हैंड. ये सब एग्जाम में जाके नहीं होगा. एग्जाम में जाके वो होगा कंपैशन, लिख डाली, 10 लिख दी. मेरा पेपर बहुत अच्छा हुआ है, सब आता था मुझे. फिर बाद में सर मार्क्स नहीं आए, समझ नहीं आ रहा क्या करना है. 70 ही मिले हैं एथिक्स में, 70 ही मिलेंगे, 50 मिलने चाहिए थे. 70 भी दे दी उसने दया खा के तुम्हें, कि तुम कहीं शौक में ना चले जाओ कि मैंने तो इतनी सारी क्लासेस अटेंड करी थी. 50 नंबर वहां अच्छा नहीं पढ़ाते, उस किताब में अच्छा नहीं लिखा है. Right? Anyway, so then it says describe the ways and means to prevent non-ethical behavior in the public servant. इतना सिंपल क्वेश्चन है. Ways and means to prevent non-ethical behavior. अब कैसे इस पार्ट ऑफ द आंसर को बिगिन करेंगे? कैसे बिगिन करेंगे? वही तो पूछ रहा है वो मेजर. यही तो अभी तो तुम्हें मैंने यही समझाया, ऑब्जर्व करो. मैंने अभी इतनी सारी चीजें बोली, अब तुमने सीधा बोला बाय गिविंग मेजर्स. अरे तो वही तो पूछ रहा है वो, सीधा मेजर से ही लिख दोगे. अरे मेरे भाई सुनो मैं क्या कह रहा हूं. आरटीआई, आई एम सेइंग हाउ विल यू राइट अबाउट दिस. लिखने से पहले सीधा लिख देगा आरटीआई. क्या लिखेगा? वाह, यस मैम. नहीं नहीं मैम, पीछे से ऐसे ही बोल दीजिए. वो तो ठीक है, वो पार्ट हो गया. इस वाले पार्ट का बताइए, इस वाले पार्ट के लिए सेकंड पार्ट. सॉरी, हाँ कोई दिक्कत नहीं है मैम, आप सोचिए तब तक. हाँ जी, और लोग बताइए कौन कह रहे हैं. यस, क्या लिखें? सीधा आरटीआई लिख देंगे या ऐसे लिखेंगे मेजर्स टू इंश्योर टू प्रिवेंट नॉन एथिकल बिहेवियर. क्या उखाड़ लिया ये सब लिख के? कैसे लिख सकते हैं? सोचिए. What example will you give? What background will you give? Maybe you can do that. You may write some example of non-ethical behavior by a civil servant. ऑल दैट नहीं है मैम वो बाय द वे, बट ठीक है, हाँ यू मे राइट, यस यू मे टॉक अबाउट दैट, यस। वो तो वेज एंड मेजर्स ही हो गए ना सर। You may talk about harms of non-ethical behavior. You may define non-ethical behavior. You may give example of non-ethical behavior. You may give a real life example of non-ethical behavior. समझ में आ रहा है मैं क्या कह रहा हूं? Importance of preventing non-ethical behavior. Or what? हाँ, अरे मेरे भाई मैं वही तो समझा रहा हूं, सुन रहे हो तुम क्या कह रहा हूं मैं? नहीं तुम सुन नहीं रहे ना, तुम सुन रहे ही नहीं हो मुझे मैं क्या कह रहा हूं। पहले मेरे को सुनो मैं क्या कह रहा हूं। मैंने क्या बोला? नॉन एथिकल बिहेवियर या तो डिस्क्राइब कर दो। लिखा तुमने ये जो मैंने बोला? तुमने लिखा नहीं, तुम बस यहां पे आए हो, मैं सत्संग में थोड़ी ना आए हो, मैं बाबा थोड़ी ना हूं। किस लिए आए हो यहां पर अगर नोट नहीं कर रहे कुछ तो? सबसे पहले तो ये अरे रुक जाओ मेरे भाई, ट्रेन पकड़नी है, बहुत समय है मेरे पास, 5 घंटे बैठ जाऊंगा मैं, पर पहले अप्रोच तो समझो। आधे लोग सुन ही नहीं रहे हैं मुझे, मैं बता रहा हूं, अभी भी यहां पे बैठे हैं पर उनको लग रहा है हम सुन रहे हैं, पर वो उनका दिमाग सुन ही नहीं रहा है मैं क्या कह रहा हूं। सर आप नॉन एथिकल बिहेवियर या तो डिस्क्राइब कीजिए, आप लिख क्यों नहीं रहे अभी भी? ये बात मैं 4 बार बोल दी मैंने, अभी भी तुम फिर मेरे को ही देख रहे हो। मेरी शक्ल इतनी अच्छी है क्या? बता दो भाई। सर ऐसा नहीं है, आप कुछ तो कॉन्टेक्स्ट देंगे। ठीक है सर डाल दीजिए मेजर्स, बट मैं वही तो बता रहा हूं सर आपको। अगर आपको अपने आंसर को सेपरेट आउट करना है दूसरे आदमी से, एक बात बताइए मुझे, आपको लगता है कि जो आदमी प्रीलिम्स क्वालिफाई किया है, इस साल का प्रीलिम्स देखा आप सबने, आप में से बहुतों ने दिया भी है, आप में से बहुत सारे क्वालिफाई भी कर रहे होंगे, आपको लगता है जो आदमी प्रीलिम्स क्वालिफाई कर रहा है उसमें इतना दिमाग नहीं है कि वो वेज एंड मींस टू इंश्योर नॉन एथिकल बिहेवियर ना लिख सके? मुझे बताइए, इसका जवाब दीजिए मुझे। लिख सकता है? सारे कैंडिडेट्स लिख सकते हैं सर, 15,000 के 15,000। तो आपके आंसर में ऐसा क्या? सभी लिखेंगे आरटीआई, सभी लिखेंगे सोशल ऑडिट सर, सभी लिखेंगे कुछ ना कुछ। आप बात समझिए मेरी, मैं क्या कह रहा हूं। सभी, हर कोई लिखेगा सिटीजन चार्टर, हर कोई लिखेगा कुछ ना कुछ। आपका आंसर कैसे डिफरेंट है आप सोचिए तो। यही मैं बात समझा रहा हूं आपको। इफ योर आंसर हैज टू बी डिफरेंट फ्रॉम द अदर्स, यू हैव टू थिंक हाउ आई कैन मेक दिस आंसर बेटर। मैं इतना समय स्पेंड कर रहा हूं इस पे यही समझाने के लिए। मैं सबसे सिंपल क्वेश्चंस पहले उठाए, ये बड़े सिंपल टॉपिक्स हैं पर इनमें भी मार्क्स आते हैं। 5 नंबर का तो ये भी है। आप केवल मेजर्स लिख देंगे और थोड़ा बहुत ऊपर लिख दिया, 1.5 नंबर मिल जाएगा। क्या ऐसा है तुम्हारे नंबर आंसर में खास कि मैं तुम्हें 3 दूं 5 में से? समझिए, उसके पास बहुत सारे ऑप्शंस हैं वहां पर, 15,000 ऑप्शन है उसके पास चूज करने को। तुम इकलौते, क्या स्पेशल है तुम में? जब आप मांगते हैं कुछ तो डिजर्व भी होना चाहिए ना। वो डिजर्विंग कैसे दिखाएंगे आपकी? मेरा आंसर डिजर्विंग है सर, गिव मी 3। यू गेट द पॉइंट सर। आई एम नॉट सेइंग दैट यू वेस्ट योर टाइम बाय राइटिंग लॉन्ग स्टोरीज, but one example, that's it. Some example of corruption that you have come across in the newspapers, you just write about that. Non-ethical behavior, फोन गिर गया डैम के अंदर, उसने पूरा पानी निकलवा लिया डैम से, रिजर्वॉयर से। नॉन एथिकली तो है ये। नॉन एथिकली तो है। इतने सारे एग्जाम्पल्स हैं, कोई भी एग्जाम्पल लिख दीजिए बस नॉन एथिकल बिहेवियर का। नॉन एथिकल बिहेवियर डिफाइन कर दीजिए, नॉन एथिकल बिहेवियर के डिसएडवांटेजेस लिख दीजिए। और मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूं लंबी सी कहानी लिखिएगा, 5-10 वर्ड्स के अंदर निपटा सकते हैं आप ये, अगर आप चाहें तो। certain non-ethical behavior such as recent activity of draining water to get a personal mobile from a reservoir can be avoided by. अब मुझे बताओ, ये मैंने लिखा, तुमने लिखा ways to avoid non-ethical behavior, किसको नंबर ज्यादा दोगे? तुम बोलोगे नहीं हम ही देंगे, बेवकूफ हो तुम फिर। अगर कोई ये सोच रहा है कि तुम्हें ही मिलेंगे ज्यादा, तो लिख के देखिए प्लीज, जाइए मेरी तरफ से 6 नहीं 50 अटेम्प्ट लिखिएगा एक बार, आपको नंबर मिल जाए अगर एग्जामिनर से तो बताइएगा जरूर मुझे आके। प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से। डू यू गेट, आर वी ऑन द सेम पेज और नॉट? यस। सी, आई एम नॉट टेलिंग यू दैट दिस इज द ओनली वे। इसको मत मान लीजिए, हाँ सर ने बोला था कि ना एग्जाम्पल लिख देते हैं, एग्जाम्पल लिख देंगे। थिंक ना बाबा, थिंक, बट दिस थिंकिंग ऑल्सो हैज टू बी डन बिफोर द एग्जामिनेशन एज वेल। यू हैव टू प्रैक्टिस दिस थिंकिंग, देन ओनली यू विल बी एबल टू डू ऑल ऑफ दैट। इज दैट क्लियर टू एवरीवन? राइट। सो डिस्क्राइब द वेज एंड मीन्स। अब देखिए इसको, मतलब दिस विल बी बीनीथ आवर इंटेलिजेंस दैट वी आर डिस्कसिंग वेज टू प्रिवेंट नॉन एथिकल बिहेवियर, राइट? 10 essential values: empathy, integrity, efficiency, accountability, transparency, anonymity, neutrality, whatever you may write, right? Examples दीजिएगा कुछ। We have in our classes discussed about examples of some traits of ethical values, behavior. You would remember we had discussed about this example. We had discussed about this particular example, lack of compassion, right? We had discussed about number of examples. We had discussed about this example, lack of objectivity. But you have to show to the examiner ना that I can connect things. मैं सिर्फ किताबी कीड़ा नहीं हूं सर, कि किताब में लिखा है, मेरे नोट्स में मेरे टीचर ने पढ़ाया था मुझे, कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट में मैं गया था 2.25 लाख रुपया देकर, मेरे पिताजी के पास 2.25 लाख रुपए थे देने के लिए, तो आप लगा लीजिए मेरे पिताजी के पास पूरी कितनी संपत्ति होगी। एग्जामिनर वो थोड़ी ना चेक कर रहा है। एग्जामिनर इज वांटिंग टू नो वेदर यू आर डिफरेंट फ्रॉम द अदर्स और नॉट, वेदर यू कैन एक्चुअली शो दैट you can relate things or not. You get it? Get the idea now? Right? Can we proceed further? Any questions still here? Yes, ma'am. बिल्कुल, वो भी लिख सकते हैं। इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ एथिकल बिहेवियर भी लिख सकते हैं। You can write about importance of ethical behavior also. See, Vivekananda says that there are multiple ways to achieve the same God. If we talk about Indian values, say for example, one is worshipping Krishna, one is worshipping Shiva, one is worshipping Shakti, one is worshipping nothing. He's just worshipping some natural, supernatural power. One is worshipping mother, one is worshipping father, one is looking at mother only as God. One is looking his employer as God, boss as God. जो मेरे बॉस ने बोल दिया वही कर लेता हूं, प्रमोशन मिल जाएगी। Anyway, so the point that I am trying to say is, he says that these all rivers are ultimately flowing into the ocean, which is the God. So the point I am trying to say is that all of you can achieve same marks by different ways. आप सब अलग तरीके से, आप एथिकल बिहेवियर की इंपॉर्टेंस लिख दीजिए, नॉन एथिकल की बिहेवियर की प्रॉब्लम लिख दीजिएगा, एग्जाम्पल लिख दीजिए नॉन एथिकल बिहेवियर का, जैसे भी लिखिए, कुछ भी करिए। हाउ डज इट मैटर? योर थॉट, योर ओरिजिनलिटी इज टू बी देयर, दैट्स इट। बट कुछ ओरिजिनल लिखिए। आप में और 15,000 कैंडिडेट में क्या फर्क है? आपने लिख दिया कि वेज टू एंश्योर नॉन एथिकल, वेज टू ओवरकम नॉन एथिकल बिहेवियर। बड़ा स्मार्ट दिखा रहे हैं आप अपने आप को, उससे क्या पता चल रहा है? उसको पता चल रहा है कि हाँ इसने क्वेश्चन पढ़ लिया है। यही तो पता चल रहा है उसको, इसने क्वेश्चन पढ़ लिया है, और इस बेवकूफ ने अपना टाइम भी वेस्ट कर दिया। Please understand that. See, it may not be possible in every answer. I am not saying that it is possible in every answer that you can give this thought. But if you practice in this way, if you train your mind in this way before going into the examination hall, you can do all of this. Get it? Right? Anyway, let's move on quickly now. We have already, we reached the 1.5 hour mark. So a positive attitude is considered to be an essential characteristic of a civil servant who is often required to function under extreme stress. What contributes to a positive attitude in a person? So there are two parts of the question. The first part is that positive attitude is considered to be an essential characteristic of a civil servant who is often required to function under extreme stress. So he's basically saying, why is positive, वो अपने आप बता रहा है, why is positive attitude an essential characteristic? क्यों? क्योंकि आपको बहुत बार डिफरेंट डिफिकल्ट एक्सट्रीम स्ट्रेस की कंडीशंस में काम करना पड़ता है. बता दिया उसने पॉजिटिव एटीट्यूड का इंपॉर्टेंस. अब आप क्या करेंगे? अब वो कह रहा है व्हाट कंट्रीब्यूट्स टू ए पॉजिटिव एटीट्यूड इन अ पर्सन. सेकेंड वाला पार्ट तो बहुत इजी है. अगर आपने बेसिक्स पढ़ा हो, एटीट्यूड कैसे शेप होता है, व्हाट आर द वेज in which a person can develop a positive attitude. By interacting with people, you can form a positive attitude. By reading books, you can develop a positive attitude. By freeing yourself from expectations, you can develop a positive attitude. By devoting yourself selflessly to the duty, you can adopt a positive attitude. So वो तो बहुत सिंपल है, बट क्या केवल यही लिखना है इस क्वेश्चन में? What contributes to a positive attitude in a person? Is that what this question is all about? कैसे बिगिन कर सकते हैं? क्या आइडिया होना चाहिए? Don't tell me exact words, but tell me what you can write out in this answer. Start with role of civil services. What will you write? ओके ओके, व्हाट एल्स? और क्या हो सकता है? Positive attitude. So you may write about some examples, case studies of civil servants, those who have worked in different conditions, and how they acted in a positive manner or in a negative manner in a certain situation. And we can also talk about interweaving that with the idea of how to develop a positive attitude. Actually that is what is expected in the answer. So what the examiner is expecting you is first to explain that civil servants often have to work under extreme stress of expectations of people. They have to deliver in limited time, minimal resources. You will write about all these things. What is stressful means? Stress का क्या मतलब है? Stress का ये मतलब है कि प्रमोशन नहीं होगा, या स्ट्रेस का ये मतलब है कि मेरी पोस्टिंग कहां मिलेगी? Limited resources, political pressure, expectations of people, limited availability of time, managing multiple stakeholders. Isn't that the stress? Or you think stress is something else? Who am I going to get married to? How much dowry is she going to bring? Whether she will say yes or no. Is that the stress that a civil servant has to deal with? Whether the Prime Minister will like my submission or not and make me his secretary, whether the Chief Minister will like my submission and send me to that plush posting in New York, is that the stress? स्ट्रेस, तो पहले स्ट्रेस डिफाइन कीजिए। देखिए क्लू सारे एग्जाम आंसर क्वेश्चन में ही छुपे हुए हैं। टॉक अबाउट दैट सिविल सर्वेंट्स often work under stressful conditions due to limited resources, limited time, expectation of people, managing multiple stakeholders, this, that, whatever. In such situations, a person can either act positively and look at it as a challenge, look at it as a motivation to do better, or can become demotivated, can become dejected, can give up. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अब एग्जाम्पल दीजिएगा कुछ ना वहां पर कि डिफिकल्ट सर्कमस्टांसेस में कैसे सिविल सर्वेंट्स ने ओवरकम किया डिफिकल्ट सिचुएशंस को, हाउ डिड दे मैनेज। इतने सारे एग्जाम्पल्स हैं, रोज हम न्यूज़पेपर में कुछ ना कुछ पढ़ते रहते हैं पब्लिक सर्वेंट सिविल सर्वेंट्स के बारे में कुछ ना कुछ कहीं पे, एंड यू मस्ट प्रिपेयर दोज एग्जाम्पल्स एनीवे अप फ्रंट। यू मेंशन 1 or 2 एग्जाम्पल्स ओनली, ज्यादा नहीं लिखना है, 1-2 एग्जाम्पल्स, दैट टू इन ब्रीफ। TN session manage the expectations of the citizens by conducting free and fair elections and dealing with the pressures created by the political parties with the help of powers given to him under the constitution or law or something like that. Could be just one example, could be anything. Whereas negative attitude has resulted in situation where people have ended up blaming the citizens, civil servants ended up blaming citizens, or they resigned, or they try and seek a transfer, right? Something like that you may write down. And then once you have written that, in that only either or separately you may talk about this, what contributes to a positive attitude in a person. Ideally you should write there only, अगर आपके पास कोई एग्जाम्पल हो। महात्मा गांधी का लिखिए ना, हिस्ट्री पढ़ी है सबने, महात्मा गांधी के एग्जाम्पल से लिख दीजिएगा, तिलक के एग्जाम्पल से कुछ लिख दीजिएगा, किसी अंबेडकर के एग्जाम्पल से लिख दीजिएगा। He faced discrimination, lifelong discrimination. Did he develop a negative attitude by saying कि नहीं मेरे साथ बुरा हो रहा है, भगवान तूने मुझे ही क्यों दलित पैदा किया, काश मैं भी उसके घर में पैदा होता तो मेरा भी ऐसा नहीं। he has a positive attitude, so he's saying I'll do things to uplift the masses. Could be any example, guys. I'm just telling you that you have to think, and then you must interweave it there only, उसी में कर दीजिएगा साथ साथ में। Such a positive attitude can be developed, but if a negative attitude is developed, it may result in this, and to avoid it, we must follow certain basic principles or whatever, जिस तरीके से भी you may write it down. You get the point? See, I am again and again telling you, I am not here to tell you the answers. I am to discuss what the examiner is expecting from you. Answers आप खुद से ढूंढिएगा, मैं आंसर नहीं बताने आया हूं यहां पर। एथिक्स के पेपर में तो नहीं, जब सिक्योरिटी और पॉलिटी का डिस्कशन में करूंगा तब मैं आपको वो भी बता दूंगा कि वो क्या क्या ब्रॉड पॉइंट्स एक्सपेक्ट कर रहा है आपसे, बट ये इतना कंटेंट ओरिएंटेड आंसर सब्जेक्ट नहीं है एक्चुअली। पता है, इसमें नॉलेज का रोल कम है और आपके व्यूज और फिलॉसफी और थॉट्स का रोल ज्यादा है। ये अलग पेपर है, इसको उसी तरीके से ट्रीट कीजिएगा। इज दैट क्लियर टू एवरीवन? कैन वी प्रोसीड फर्दर? Yes. Can we? And sorry? Ends. Huh. That is your attitude. वो आपकी चॉइस है कि आप एंड्स पे फोकस करें या मीन्स पे फोकस करें, पर एक बात ध्यान रखिएगा, जिस पे भी फोकस करें आपके पूरे पेपर में वो एक कंसिस्टेंट बिहेवियर दिखना चाहिए। एक जगह जो है आप कह रहे हैं कि मैं ऐसा कर दूंगा और दूसरी जगह कुछ और कह रहे हैं, आप दोगले हैं, यू आर अ हिपोक्रेट देन। आप बात समझ रहे हैं मेरी? सो एग्जामिनर एक्सपेक्ट्स कि आपकी पर्सनालिटी में कोई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट नहीं होना चाहिए, आपकी पर्सनालिटी में कोई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट नहीं होना चाहिए, द्वंद्व नहीं होना चाहिए कि एक जगह तो तुम कुछ और कहते हो और दूसरी जगह कुछ और कहते हो। तो आप बिल्कुल कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, एंड्स के पर्सपेक्टिव से लिख दीजिए। मैंने आपको ड्यूटी और धर्मा के पर्सपेक्टिव से बताया, आप देखिए कॉन्सिक्वेंशियलिस्ट थ्योरी भी है, यूटिलिटेरियन पर्सपेक्टिव भी है, डियोंटोलॉजिकल भी है, उससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता सर। पर अपने आंसर्स में एंड इन योर एंटायर पेपर देयर शुड बी सम काइंड ऑफ अ कोहेरेंस, वरना उसको दिख जाएगा कि ये स्प्लिट पर्सनैलिटी है या ये ऑनेस्ट नहीं है, झूठ बोल रहा है, और नहीं मिलेंगे उतने नंबर। I am, see, agreed that in different situations you may have to apply different logics, but different situation में horses for courses होगा, of course, but apparent conflict नहीं दिखना चाहिए सर उसको। मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूं कि आप एक जगह डियोंटोलॉजिकल बोले और दूसरी जगह कॉन्सिक्वेंशियलिस्ट नहीं बोल सकते, पर उसको अपैरेंट कॉन्फ्लिक्ट नहीं दिखना चाहिए आपके व्यूज में, एकदम ऑब्वियस। अरे यार यहां पे तो ये बोल रहा था बड़ी एथिक्स और इंटेग्रिटी की बात कर रहा था, यहां पे इसने बोला है कि यार मेरा ना ऑफिस के अंदर सेक्सुअल असॉल्टर है पर वो बेस्ट परफॉर्मर है, तो क्या करूं? ये मैं कह रहा हूं, दैट्स इट। वो एथिक्स, इंटेग्रिटी एंड एप्टीट्यूड है ना सर। इंटेग्रिटी क्या होती है? कंसिस्टेंसी इन योर थॉट्स, in your action, in your behavior, in what you think, what you do and how you are generally, वो कंसिस्टेंसी होनी चाहिए। मैं बस वो कह रहा हूं, गेट द पॉइंट? यस। इज देयर एनी प्रॉब्लम इन दैट, इज माई क्वेश्चन। आप बताओ। तो so are you not allowed to hold your own personal religious beliefs? And why do you look at religion as a bad thing? It is in your mind it's a bad thing. I am carrying a book right now with me which I have been reading for last 2 days. This is called as Hinduism. Does that make me a bad individual? I am just trying to know more about Hinduism from a philosophical, from a religious, from a ritual, from a societal perspective. Possibly there is a book available on Islam and Christianity like this, I would want to read that also. But simply because I am a Muslim, I should not write about Quran, or simply because I am a Buddhist, I should not write about Buddha's teachings, or simply because I am a Hindu, I should not write about what the Mahabharata or the Gita is telling me. Why not? These are all also sourcey. Ultimately religion is nothing but a way of living life in an ethical manner. Religion का गोल क्या है, मुझे बताओ, क्या है गोल किसी भी रिलीजन का? नहीं, सोसाइटी को छोड़ दो, तुम बड़े सोसाइटी के ठेका लेने आए हो, सोसाइटी को करेंगे। अबे तुमने अपने को सुधार लिया? लाइफ को मीनिंग देना, मीनिंग का क्या मतलब? व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ लाइफ? व्हाट इज द गोल ऑफ रिलीजन? टू अचीव पीस। आदमी इधर से उधर क्यों भाग रहा है पागल की तरह? आप कोई बिजनेसमैन है, वो पैसा कमाना चाहता है बहुत सारा, क्यों भाग रहा है पैसा कमाने के पीछे? क्या करेगा पैसा कमा के? क्या मिलेगा? जॉय, है ना? या कुछ मटेरियल चीज खरीदेगा, उससे जॉय मिलेगी, या बहुत सारा पैसा होगा, बहुत पावर होगी तो जॉय मिलेगी। व्हाट इज द अल्टीमेट गोल? हैप्पीनेस, फ्रीडम, मोक्ष, सैल्वेशन, मुक्ति। व्हाट आर ऑल ऑफ दीज थिंग्स? That is the end goal of any religion, sir. So why do you think of religion as a bad thing, sir? Why can't you write? See, Constitution of India, Article 25 allows each and every individual to has his or her own religious beliefs, right to practice, profess and propagate those religious beliefs. As a civil servant, you should not be propagating your religious beliefs, of course. As a civil servant, you should not be showing your religious beliefs at every moment कि हर जगह बस ये जो है अपना religious rituals और ceremonies लेके पहुंच जाता है. But इसका मतलब ये थोड़ी ना आप अपना जो beliefs हैं core आप उसको छोड़ देंगे. Religion का किसी का भी जो objective है वो ultimately इंसान को moral बनाना है, इंसान को ethical बनाना है. और हर religion का अपना तरीका है. क्योंकि आप एक रिलीजन में बिलीव करते हैं इसका मतलब यह नहीं है सर आप दूसरे में नहीं बिलीव करते. मैं एक आइडिया में बिलीव करता हूं बस, एंड दिस इज वेयर आई एम कमिंग. अब उससे ये थोड़ी ना प्रूव होता है कि आप बिगट हैं, बिगट समझते हैं. समवन हु हेट्स अदर रिलीजन और अदर कम्युनिटीज और अदर पीपल, ये थोड़ी ना बोल रहा हूं मैं आपको. अगर आपको कुरान से कुछ अच्छा मिलता है तो कुरान से सीखिए, बाइबल से अच्छा मिलता है बाइबल से सीखिए. अगर आपको ज़ेंड एवेस्टा से कुछ अच्छा मिलता है वहां से सीखिए. अगर आपको किसी अपनी पेरेंट्स की लाइफ से अच्छा मिलता है वहां सीखिए. उससे क्या फर्क पड़ता है? गेट द पॉइंट सर. ये तो नहीं है ना मैंने बोला कि ये किताब पढ़ रहे, हाँ ये तो, अरे भाई आई एम ट्राइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड थिंग्स बेटर. That's all. Ultimately, what is in Hinduism they say that man can achieve God in 3 ways. ज्ञान, डिवोशन और कर्म. ज्ञान, भक्ति या कर्म. That's it. अब ये मेरा बिलीफ है, आप किसी और रिलीजियस बिलीफ में या किसी और रिलीजियस फिलॉसफी में रखते हैं तो वो ठीक है. पर ये नहीं हर जगह ही आपने जो है बस रामायण का उच्चारण करके थोड़ा ना लिखना है सर, वहां पर श्लोक थोड़ा ना लिखने हैं, फिलॉसफी लिखनी है सर. कहीं से भी आ सकती है फिलॉसफी. रिलीजियस टेक्स्ट आर ऑल्सो अ सोर्स ऑफ फिलॉसफी, राइट. गलत नहीं है कुछ रिलीजन में, हमारी सोच में गलत है. रिलीजन इज नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम, ह्यूमन बीइंग्स आर अ प्रॉब्लम. Right? Anyway, yes, sir. Yes, why not? But of course, you should be aware of how much to write. So he's saying that in the question it's asking about positive attitude and its importance. Can we write about negative attitude? Yes, why not? Why not? You may think so. What can I say? Yes. Why not? See, it's up to you what example. See, देखिए वो example पे judge नहीं कर रहा है सर आपको. Please understand that. He is not. अब कि यार ये अब तुम हिटलर का example लिख दोगे. He was a great leader, leadership qualities. But ठीक है सर, it's unless you are writing something drastic. आप उसामा बिन लादेन का लिख दो, great manager of people and had great technical knowledge of how to take the planes and barge them into architectural buildings. Right. Unless you're doing that, you can write any example. Okay, can we proceed further? Now, let's move on to the next question. So, okay, so I hope that you've got some idea of how to approach these foundational values and services topics. See, what you should do for these topics is, I have already told to all of you, those who have attended my classes, but for the benefit of those who are not our students, please ensure that you prepare basic set of values. Write each and every value that has been mentioned in the syllabus. You should know the meaning of it, you should know the examples of it, you should know the advantages of it, you should know the problems associated with the why those values are not followed. You should know the various examples from civil service life. You should know examples from your life. When have you shown compassion? Why should I believe you that you will be a good civil servant and show compassion? जब तक तुमने आज तक compassion ही नहीं दिखाया अपनी 21 साल की उम्र में, मिनिमम 21 साल की उम्र होगी, पेपर लिख रहे हो, अगर तुमने 21 साल में, मतलब विच इज ऑलमोस्ट 1/3 ऑफ योर वर्किंग लाइफ, तुमने कभी कंपैशन ही नहीं दिखाया, तुम्हारे पास कोई एग्जाम्पल ही नहीं है, तो तुम खोखले हो, तो तुम कहां आ रहे हो सर्विस में? और कंपैशन के लिए जरूरी नहीं है कि आपने एनजीओ ही चलाई हो, कंपैशन दिखाने के लिए जरूरी नहीं है कि आपने किसी भूखे मरते हुए इंसान को डूबने से बचा लिया हो। कंपैशन बहुत सारी तरीके से दिखाया जा सकता है। कंपैशन आप एनिमल्स के लिए भी दिखा सकते हैं, कंपैशन आप स्ट्रीट डॉग्स के लिए भी दिखा सकते हैं, कंपैशन आप गरीब लोगों के लिए कोई कुछ भी किसी भी तरीके से दिखा सकते हैं। मेरे यहां पे जो घर पे मेड आती है, मैंने उसके बच्चों को थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ाई करनी सिखाने की कोशिश करी, मैंने उनको थोड़ा बहुत गाइड किया करियर के रिस्पेक्ट में, क्योंकि मैं खुद इंजीनियर हूं, तो मैंने उन्हें बताया कि वो कैसे एक इंजीनियरिंग एंट्रेंस एग्जाम की तैयारी कर सकते हैं। ये भी तो कंपैशन ही है। आप चाह रहे हो बड़ा सा कंपैशन दिखाऊं मैं कोई उसको ऐसा कि वो मान जाए कि मैं सबसे दयालु आदमी हूं। अबे दयालु है तो तू आया क्यों रहा है यहां पर? कर ले वही जो कर रहा है। ठीक बात कह रहा हूं कि नहीं? अगर आप मेधा पाटकर हैं ऑलरेडी, आप अरुणा रॉय हैं ऑलरेडी, आप बाबा आमटे हैं, तो आप काहे लिख रहे हैं एग्जाम साहब? आपके लिए थोड़ी ना है सर्विस, आप तो ऑलरेडी बहुत कुछ कर चुके हैं। महात्मा गांधी सिविल सर्विस एग्जाम लिख रहे हैं। मैंने देश को आजादी दिलाई थी। You getting what I'm trying to say? Please write simple things. Don't complicate matters. मैंने आजाद हिंद फौज बनाई थी, इसलिए मेरा सिविल सर्विस में सिलेक्शन होना चाहिए। प्लीज यू हैव टू राइट सिंपल थिंग्स, सिंपल सोचिएगा। Find examples from your life of all those values. Find examples from the lives of the civil servants which you can write as case studies in your answers. Think about those values, why those values are important to you. Rank those values according to their importance in your mind. Why is compassion more important for you than, let's say, for example, transparency? So you should think about it. You may not have all the answers, but at least think and write down this on paper so that when you go into the examination you are very clear. एक बार उसने सवाल पूछ लिया, happiness means different things to different people. What does happiness means to you? Wow. अब बताओ मुझे इस क्वेश्चन की तैयारी कौन टीचर करा सकता है? What does happiness means to you? ये थोड़ा ना लिखोगे कि अगर वो हां कह देगी तो that will be the happiest day of my life. Happiness. When I watch Virat Kohli hitting a 6 and winning match for India, I get happiness. Do you think you should be writing those answers? Think. You have an opportunity to impress the examiner, to tell him that you are not just a shallow individual. You are someone who is a well accomplished individual in your intelligence. आप एक समझदार व्यक्ति हैं, वो दिखाइएगा एग्जामिनर को, राइट? लुक लिख के आ गए कि मेरे को आइसक्रीम खाने में हैप्पीनेस मिलती है। अगर वो ये लिखता कि आई फाइंड हैप्पीनेस इन ऑल द थिंग्स दैट आई डू, आई ट्राई टू फाइंड जॉय इवन इन द सॉरोज, even when I fail, I look at that also gives me happiness. I look at that also as a happy source of happiness, because I feel that I have at least learned something. Is that a better answer or not? But you are saying I derive happiness by creating or by writing code, or by making good food, or by serving my parents. Think beyond your parents, yourself, your ice cream, and whom you love. Think beyond that, and then you will find the true answer to that, and then you will find the better answer to that as well. Get that? Anyway, so let's move on now. Ethical dilemmas in public institutions. I have already told you that this topic is of great significance as far as the case study portion is concerned, but certain questions have been asked related to this as well in the past. So on this, let's have a look at the question. It says that besides domain knowledge, a public official needs innovativeness. I don't know whether innovativeness is a word or not, but anyway, needs innovativeness and creativity of high order as well. आप बोल रहे हैं ways and measures to ensure creativity. वो बोलेगा that is why you lack creativity. You don't have any creativity. You can't think creatively. So it says that besides domain knowledge, a public official needs innovativeness and creativity of a high order as well while resolving ethical dilemmas. Discuss with suitable examples. So firstly, you must define what ethical dilemmas are. Right? Or what else could be the approach? और क्या कर सकते हैं इसमें क्वेश्चन में बताइए. डोमेन नॉलेज की इंपॉर्टेंस को बता सकते हैं. ओके पर वो तो करना ही है सर, पूरे आंसर में ही तो वो करना है. डोमेन नॉलेज सी देखिए, अब क्वेश्चन को देखिए, ध्यान से पढ़िए वो क्या कह रहा है. 10 बार पढ़िए क्वेश्चन को, तब जाके समझ में आएगा. आप चाह रहे हैं एक बारी में देखा और समझ में आ गया, नहीं होगा. इट सेज दैट बिसाइड्स डोमेन नॉलेज a public official needs innovativeness and creativity of a high order as well while resolving ethical dilemmas. Discuss with suitable examples. So if I were in your place, introduction that comes to top of my mind is something what he mentioned, that I will talk about that domain knowledge of constitution, laws, problems of the people could be also domain knowledge, no? How to solve those problems, financial matters, health issues, educational issues. These are all things that a civil servants need to possess. But knowledge alone cannot solve problems that civil servants face, such as in case of ethical dilemmas. अब आप यहां पे एथिकल डायलेमा को एक्सप्लेन करने से पहले एज अ डेफिनेशन मेरा सजेशन रहेगा कि आप एथिकल डायलेमा को एग्जांपल्स के थ्रू भी एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं. यू मे राइट अबाउट एन एथिकल डायलेमा थ्रू एन एग्जांपल एज वेल. फॉर एग्जांपल, अ सिविल सर्वेंट, अब सोचिएगा कि किसी, अब एग्जांपल सोचिए ऐसा कोई जहां पे डोमेन नॉलेज तो है पर मेरे पास एक एथिकल डायलेमा है जिसके लिए मुझे क्रिएटिविटी चाहिए होगी. So there is a road that has to be created. I am an engineer or I am the in charge of that construction. I have domain knowledge of how much cement and reta and this and that और किस elevation पे road बने. और आप कुछ ऐसा example दीजिए कि there is a road which has to be made in a hilly terrain. Say for example, I may have the person, the civil servant may have domain knowledge because of his degree in civil engineering, but he may face ethical dilemmas such as affecting the construction of this road, affecting environment, right? It may need acquisition of land of various people living in that area. Ethical dilemma है ना. सो थिंक ऑफ दोज, उस डायरेक्शन में सोचिएगा. यूपीएससी आपको क्वेश्चन सोचने पे मजबूर कर रही, आंसर सोचने में मजबूर कर रही है. आप सोचना नहीं चाहते और आप इसको बिल्कुल एकदम सिंपल लेना चाहते हैं कि मैं एथिकल डायलेमा की डेफिनेशन लिख दूंगा पहले तो, और उसके बाद फिर मैं बता दूंगा कि नॉलेज की इंपॉर्टेंस क्या होती है, फिर मैं बता दूंगा इनोवेटिवनेस और क्रिएटिविटी की कुछ क्या इंपॉर्टेंस होती है, कुछ एग्जाम्पल लिख दूंगा, हो गया. हो सकता है आपको मार्क्स मिल जाए, हो सकता है बहुत अच्छा भी कर लें, बट कोई गारंटी नहीं है. और ये मैं ईयर आफ्टर ईयर देखता हूं, अच्छे सिंसियर कैंडिडेट, पढ़े हुए कैंडिडेट एग्जाम में जाते हैं और ऐसी तैसी करके आ जाते हैं पूरी अपनी, और फिर बाद में समझ में नहीं आता. 1 अटेम्प्ट, 2 अटेम्प्ट, 3 अटेम्प्ट, 4 अटेम्प्ट देते रहते हैं पर जीएस में मार्क्स नहीं आते, क्योंकि नॉलेज तो है पर क्वेश्चन को एड्रेस नहीं कर रहे हैं. सो थिंक ऑफ, आप इलस्ट्रेशन बना सकते हो, देखो अपने दिमाग में ना, यू कैन मेक एन इलस्ट्रेशन. यू डोंट नीड अ रियल लाइफ एग्जांपल ऑल द टाइम. कुड बी एनीथिंग, could be Armstrong Palmer's example, that he had the technical, or he had the knowledge about the problems that the people in his district in Tamenglong were facing, and he also had the domain knowledge of acquiring resources to get that road made, but there were a number of ethical dilemmas that he faced other than that. That is where creativity will come in. So how you will negotiate with the people to convince them that you please let us build the road here, give your land to us, and we will give you something in return or compensation. How you will ensure that while you are making that road, the environment doesn't get affected. So you'll have to show creativity. Think of these problems and then write that. Do you get the sense of what I'm trying to say here? Again, if you just go by simply writing this is an ethical dilemma, this, your answer will be no different from the rest of the other 15,000 candidates. Show what you have in you. And if you don't have anything in you, then think about it. Then you should not say that I deserve to be in the civil services, but I am not there. Because you never deserve to be there. Do you get the point? Can we proceed further? Any questions related to this? Can we proceed further? Right. We'll take a 5-minute break also in 2-3 minutes, and in 5 minutes, possibly after one more question. So see, I hope all of you know what is an ethical dilemma. Right? An ethical dilemma is a situation in which a difficult choice has to be made between two courses of action, either of which entails transgressing a moral principle. So many examples of ethical dilemma. Your boss is asking you to do something which is possibly not illegal, but at the same time you don't agree to it. But it is your professional duty to do so because your boss has asked you to do so. It's an ethical dilemma whether how I should overcome that particular situation. Right? So could be so many examples of ethical dilemma which I'm sure we have discussed in our classes as well. Right? See, for example, as I said, development versus environment is an ethical dilemma, biggest ethical dilemma that we are facing today. Displacement of people versus development, ethical dilemma that I just talked about. Cost saving versus reaching out to maximum number of people is an ethical dilemma. Whether I should focus on health first or on building the statues first or on developing or promoting sports first is an ethical dilemma. Right? So you have to think about those ethical dilemmas, and we have discussed ample of them in our classes as well, and find out more ethical dilemmas. Give illustrations in answers. Even if you can't give examples, real life examples, give illustrations. Illustration बनाने में तो कुछ नहीं जाता. Fictitious story बनाने में तो कुछ नहीं जाता एग्जाम के अंदर. And a civil engineer turned civil servant may have knowledge of building a dam, but he may still face ethical dilemmas with respect to displacement of people, ecological concerns, pollution that it will lead to. Right? Whatever it is. Is that clear? Right? So now let's move on to the next question. Ab dekhiye, explain the process of resolving ethical dilemmas in public administration. It was asked in 2018. अब ये क्वेश्चन भी तो वही है अल्टीमेटली, बट अगर आप इसको प्रिपेयर किए होते तो कहीं ना कहीं आप एथिकल डायलेमा के एग्जांपल्स प्रिपेयर किए होते, एंड यू वुड हैव आल्सो अंडरस्टूड दैट रिजॉल्विंग एन एथिकल डायलेमा डज नॉट ओनली रिक्वायर नॉलेज बट इट रिक्वायर्स क्रिएटिविटी एज वेल. राइट? कैन वी मूव फर्दर? नाउ लेट्स लुक एट वन मोर क्वेश्चन. अच्छा ये दिस क्वेश्चन केम फ्रॉम वहां से आ गया ये गलती से. ओके, एनीवे, सो ये दिस वाज एक्चुअली फ्रॉम फाउंडेशनल वैल्यूज ऑफ सिविल सर्विसेज का ही क्वेश्चन है. ये उस टॉपिक का क्वेश्चन है. ये आई प्रॉब्ली मे हैव पुट इट हियर. 2021, शुड इम्पार्शियल एंड बीइंग नॉन पार्टिसन बी कंसिडर्ड एज इंडिस्पेंसिबल क्वालिटीज टू मेक अ सक्सेसफुल सिविल सर्वेंट? डिस्कस विद इलस्ट्रेशंस. वो खुद ही कह दे रहा है इलस्ट्रेशंस एक्सप्लेन कर दे. इलस्ट्रेशन और एग्जाम्पल में फर्क समझते हैं. illustration is, example is that TN Session did this, illustration is that a person who is a civil servant responsible for conducting free and fair elections in the country, when face severe political pressure, overcomes that by doing this, whatever. That's an illustration. You get it? Illustration is impersonal. Example is taking someone's name or whatever it is, some specific instance. Illustration is broad, general. Yes? So it says that should being partial and non-partisan होना चाहिए था, whatever, maybe लिखने में गलती हो गई. Should being impartial and non-partisan be considered as indispensable qualities to make a successful civil servant? Discuss with illustrations. कैसे लिख सकते हैं इसका introduction? Yes, how can you write? What all can you write? वही तो कह रहा है वो पूरे क्वेश्चन में. बेनिफिट्स ऑफ दैट. ओके, व्हाट एल्स? और बताइए कुछ इंट्रोडक्शन में क्या लिख सकते हैं, कैसे बिगिन कर सकते हैं इसके आंसर को. ओके, वेरी सिंपल, वी कैन डू दैट ऑल्सो. वी डिफाइन व्हाट इज बीइंग इम्पार्शियल एंड नॉन पार्टिसन, बट अगेन इजंट दैट टू सिंपल? एंड अगेन इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल कि आप हर क्वेश्चन में अपनी क्रिएटिविटी दिखा सकें. हो सकता है कि कुछ क्वेश्चन में आप बोलें कि यार नहीं, इसमें तो ना पहले ही वो इतना कुछ पूछ रहा है, मैं सीधा इम्पार्शियलिटी और नॉन पार्टिसनशिप और बता देता हूं कि इन दोनों में स्लाइटली डिफरेंस क्या होता है ना. मे बी. यस, व्हाट एल्स? Fair enough. So you could start with that a civil servant should possess multiple number of values such as empathy, compassion, etc. 2-3-4 लिख दी, but impartiality and non-partisanship are one of the most crucial. Yes, you may write the harmful effects. You may also write the positive aspects of being impartial and non-partisan. दोनों चीजें मिक्स करके लिख दीजिएगा. और इंटेलिजेंटली लिखेंगे तो आपको स्पेसिफिकली अलग से डेफिनेशन और अलग से ये सब चीजें लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, तो आप ये लिख सकते हो, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, तो जैसे आपने लिख दिया कि इंपॉर्टेंस, आपने वो सब पहला इंट्रोडक्शन लिख दिया, देन यू राइट अबाउट, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इम्पार्शियलिटी विच इज व्हाट, विच इज not being biased towards any particular community, any particular person, not having preconceived notions, can be shown or can have an effect on. 2-3 चीजें लिख दी, वहीं पे अलग से डेफिनेशन लिख रहे हो, अलग से वो लिख रहे हो, एक ही में वीव कर दो. You get my point? And then वहां पे आपने इंपॉर्टेंस लिख दी 2-3 पॉइंट में, फिर आपने लिख दिया कि इंपॉर्टेंस ऑल्सो लाइज because not being impartial or non-partisan can lead to these problems. वहीं पे वीव कर दिया. कुछ लोग क्या कर रहे हैं कि पहले लिख रहे हैं impartiality का मीनिंग, फिर लिख रहे हैं पॉजिटिव, फिर लिख रहे हैं नेगेटिव, बिल्कुल सिंपलिस्टिक अप्रोच अडॉप्ट करके. पर ठीक है, देखिए उसमें कोई गलत नहीं है कुछ, पर मैं यहां पे आपको वो बताने आया हूं जो और कोई नहीं बता रहा है. वरना मेरा सेशन क्यों अटेंड कर रहे हो तुम? मेरे पास 12 साल का एक्सपीरियंस है ना इस एग्जाम से रिलेटेड. आप ये नहीं बोल सकते कि नहीं वो टॉपर ने तो ऐसे बोला था. टॉपर के पास होगा बिल्कुल, पर मैं उससे ज्यादा अब इस एग्जाम के ऊपर रिसर्च और समय बिता चुका हूं. आई मे नॉट हैव बीन सक्सेसफुल माई सेल्फ, बट दैट डजंट मीन एनीथिंग. भाई गैरी कर्स्टन खुद जो है कभी कोई एक आईसीसी ट्रॉफी नहीं जीता. इसका मतलब ये थोड़ी ना है कि वो इंडियन क्रिकेट टीम को नहीं बता सकता था कि आप क्या कर सकते हैं जिससे कि यू कैन डू बेटर. अंडरस्टैंड दैट व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से, दैट इफ यू हैव टू सी दैट सिंपलिस्टिक अप्रोच इज फाइन, बट आई एम ट्राइंग टू टेल यू वेयर यू कैन रीच. आई एम नॉट सेइंग दैट यू कैन डू दिस इन एवरी पॉसिबल क्वेश्चन. मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूं. पर क्या हम कोशिश कर सकते हैं कि हम उस लेवल पे अपने आप को रेज करें? If the answer to that is yes, then of course we should try to think more and not just write every time in the same way. Please understand that candidates are becoming super prepared now. आपका कंपटीशन केवल आपसे नहीं है जो पहली अटेम्प्ट दे रहे हैं या दूसरी अटेम्प्ट दे रहे हैं, जिनका पहले नहीं हुआ, प्रीलिम्स नहीं हुआ, इस बार मेंस का अपॉर्चुनिटी है. आपका कंपटीशन उनसे भी है जिसकी 120 रैंक आई है कि नहीं है? जिसकी 120 आई है वो भी लिख रहा है वापस से, क्योंकि उसको आईएएस में जाना है. जिसकी 250 आई है वो भी लिख रहा है वापस से. आपकी में फिर क्या दिखाओगे? उस तुम्हें लगता है कि जिसकी 225 आ चुकी या 227 आ चुकी या 300 आ चुकी या 350 रैंक आ चुकी या 200 रैंक आ चुकी, क्या वो गधा है? क्या तुम उससे ज्यादा स्मार्ट हो कि तुमने लिख दिया और उसको नहीं पता होगा ये लिखने का? आई एम ट्राइंग टू टेल यू दैट. अगेन, आई एम नॉट सेइंग दैट यू कैन डू दिस इन एवरी क्वेश्चन, बट if we only think that there is a possibility of doing this in every question, will we be able to do it in 50 or 60 or 70% questions? If you don't, then what's the point? Get it? Right? So, should impartiality and non-partisanship being considered as indispensable qualities to make a successful civil servant? Discuss with illustrations. So, give some illustrations here. Illustrations दीजिएगा. For example, if a civil servant does not act impartially, if a police officer does not act impartially during communal riots, people will lose faith in democracy, justice, and the idea of constitution, and it will result in anarchy. Get the point? If a civil servant is not showing non-partisanship and is seen to be attached to only one political party, when the other political party comes into power, he will not be able to work with them effectively. Example of non-partisanship. I hope you understand what is the difference between impartiality and non-partisanship. Impartiality is being generally impartial, fair, objective, and not deciding on basis of a preconceived notions. Non-partisanship, on the other hand, is what? Not being biased towards any one particular political ideology or political party, one particular political dispensation. An IAS officer, all illustration, an IAS officer working in center who is aligned to a particular regional political party in power in his state would not be able to give dispassionate or impartial or objective or an efficient advice to the central government. Get my point? Think of illustrations. और कुछ मुश्किल नहीं है, बट ऑन द स्पॉट बनाने की कोशिश करें. ये तो नहीं होगा. ऑन द स्पॉट नहीं होता है ये सब. दिस डजंट हैपन ऑन द स्पॉट. I hope you realize now, many of you have attended my classes. I can't be discussing all of these things in the classes. There in the classes we can only discuss basic ideas, and that's why I keep telling you that please go and apply these things and think about it, and don't just think कि notes हैं, notes से आ जाएगा, जो लिखवाया है वही लिख कर आ जाएंगे. अवनीश शरण का एग्जाम्पल लिखवाया था वही लिख देंगे. अरे क्या मेहनत करनी इसमें. अगर सिलेक्शन चाहिए और शॉर्ट सिलेक्शन चाहिए तो मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी, वरना जुआ है, खेलिए. जुए में कभी जीत जाते हैं, कभी हार जाते हैं, मोस्टली हारते ही हैं. स्टैटिस्टिक्स पढ़ेंगे तो समझ जाएंगे. एनीवे, यू गेट दिस राइट नाउ. सो value of impartiality, what is the meaning, etc., and all of that, right? It helps a civil servant in taking decision that is based on objective standards instead of on basis of bias, prejudices, etc. For example, in case of land acquisition of land for public purpose, the DM may have his or her own concerns or preferences towards any of the group, but decision will have to be taken based on objective criteria and cannot be partial, and the views of the people affected should have to be ascertained, etc. इतना लंबा लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है, आप 2 illustrations लिख दीजिए सिंपल तरीके से, राइट? देखिए बेसिक्स मैंने जैसे कवर किया था, मैंने आपसे बताया था इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ इंपार्शियलिटी क्या होता है. अब आप उसको ऐसे ही नहीं एज इट इज लिख सकते ना, क्वेश्चन क्योंकि एज इट इज नहीं आ रहा है ना, वो इलस्ट्रेशन के साथ एक्सप्लेन करने बोल रहा है आपको, तो आप उसी पर्सपेक्टिव से लिखिएगा उसको. आप चाह रहे हैं, बहुत सारे कैंडिडेट्स चाहते हैं कि पका पकाया जैसा हमें पढ़ाया हम उसी को वहीं पे लिखकर आ जाएं और हमारा सिलेक्शन हो जाए. मेरे भाई ऐसे सिलेक्शन नहीं होता, क्योंकि यहां पर विजन में ही हम 15,000 स्टूडेंट पढ़ा रहे हैं, और मैं इस पे भी कॉन्फिडेंट हूं कि और कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट्स में भी बहुत सारी ये बातें हो रही होंगी. सारे कैंडिडेट्स ही पढ़ रहे हैं, तो फिर तो सबका ही अच्छे मार्क्स आने चाहिए थे, पर नहीं हो रहा है, क्योंकि एप्लीकेशन में और बेसिक पढ़ने में बहुत फर्क है. गेट इट? तभी कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट, जब लोग इस पर्सपेक्टिव से आ जाते हैं कि सिलेक्शन हो जाएगा, कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट से सिलेक्शन नहीं होता. Yesterday there was a junior of mine, he's from my college, he's an IAS officer, his sister wants to prepare for the exam. She came, she has already done some basic coaching or something, and then she was saying कि मैं अब एक फाइनल अटेम्प्ट, फुल फ्लेज्ड अटेम्प्ट देना चाहती हूँ. मैंने इस बार प्रीलिम्स दिया, मेरा नहीं होगा, बट मैं एक ढंग से अटेम्प्ट देना चाहती हूँ. लास्ट ईयर में दे नहीं पाई थी, आई वाज डूइंग माय पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन व्हाटएवर. मैंने ये फाउंडेशन कोर्स ज्वाइन करने का सोच लिया है. मैंने बोला वही क्यों, और भी कर लो 2-4, नहीं उससे आसान काम आसान हो जाएगा. कितना आसान काम हो जाएगा, काम आसान हो जाएगा, कब तक हो जाएगा, करना तो आप ही को है. मैंने उसको बोला कि भाई तुम पेपर लिखो, आंसर लाके दिखाओ मुझे, मैं बैठा हूं यहां पे, दिखाओ मुझे, तुम्हारा भाई बैठा है. पर नहीं, यूट्यूब पे देख लिया होगा कुछ किसी टॉपर का सुन के, मैंने तो फला फला कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट ज्वाइन किया था, बस उसी चीज पे फोकस किया. डिड नॉट हियर 3 घंटे की टॉपर टॉक में बस यही सुना, मैंने ये कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट ज्वाइन किया था, मैंने ये वाले नोट्स पढ़े थे, मैंने ये वाली किताब पढ़ी थी, मेरा हो गया. बस क्योंकि आप इतना ही सुनना चाहते हो, यू ओनली वॉन्ट टू हियर दैट मच. मेरे को सर ने बताया था, मैं उन सर के पास चले जाती हूं, मैं उन सर के पास गया था, उन्होंने मेरे को मेंटरशिप दी. ये भी होता है, मैं आजकल बोल देता हूं कि भाई मेरा नाम मत लेना तुम, कि मैं जतिन सर से मैंने गाइडेंस ली थी. मैंने बोला मेरे पास टाइम नहीं है इतना फालतू का. मेरे को जिसको देना होगा पर्सनल गाइडेंस मैं दे दूंगा अपनी मर्जी से, देना होगा नहीं दूंगा, मेरी मर्जी, मेरा मन, मैं नहीं देनी, नहीं दूंगा. तुम आओगे भी, मैं आधा घंटा बैठे रहूंगा, बोलते रहो, मैं नहीं दूंगा, मेरी मर्जी. समझ रहे हो? मेरे से छीन के थोड़ी ना ले लोगे, कोई मेरी जायदाद थोड़ी ना छीन लोगे मुझसे, या मेरे दिमाग का ट्रांसप्लांट करा लोगे. नहीं दूंगा. See, the point I am trying to say is that please get out of this mindset. Understand what the examiner is expecting out of you. For that, you need to read the questions and observe them very carefully. Anyway, so number of examples. Again, non-partisanship infers that officer is to do his task without any or favor of any political party, even if he has strong faith in any political thought. The values of the administrative will flow from the constitution, not from the philosophy of any political party, etc. and all of that. You may write down another example here. He has to serve different sections of the society. He has आप जिनको सर्व कर रहे हैं वो एक ही पॉलिटिकल आइडियोलॉजी के लोग थोड़ी ना है, सब तरीके की पॉलिटिकल आइडियोलॉजी के लोग हैं, और आपका काम जो है वो लोगों की बेटरमेंट है, ना कि किसी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी को प्रमोट करना. राइट? एनीवे, सो दैट्स आल्सो वन क्वेश्चन. राइट? और फिर वही जो मैं देखिए इसने एंड उससे किया है. हाउएवर दीज आर नॉट दी ओनली 2 इंपॉर्टेंट वैल्यूज, अदर वैल्यूज लाइक इंटेग्रिटी एक्सेट्रा आर आल्सो इंपॉर्टेंट इफ अ सिविल सर्वेंट इज सपोज्ड टू हैव अ मीनिंगफुल करियर. आप उल्टा बिगिन भी कर सकते हो इससे, हाउ डज इट मैटर. राइट? एनीवे, सो what is meant by the term constitutional morality, how does one uphold constitutional morality, यही मैं सवाल कह रहा था आपको, उसने पूछा था, फिर उसने एक बार 2 नंबर का पूछ लिया. State 3 basic values universal in nature, ये पहले के क्वेश्चंस हैं. State 3 basic values universal in nature in context of civil services and bring out their importance. बार बार वही घुमा घुमा के वही पूछ रहा है, लोग फिर भी नहीं कुछ करके आ रहे, क्योंकि आप लोग इतना ज्यादा ब्लाइंड हो गए हैं ना. मैं सच्ची बता रहा हूं, जो लोग तैयारी कर रहे हैं, दे आर सो ब्लाइंडेड बाय देयर ओन प्रेजुडिसेस एंड प्री कंसीव नोशंस कि वो यूट्यूब वाले बाबा ने ऐसा बोला था, उन्हीं की बात सुन लेते हैं. अपना भी तो दिमाग लगाओ, अपना भी तो दिमाग लगाओ. उस टॉपर ने बोला था मैंने वो वाला इंस्टीट्यूट ज्वाइन किया था, मम्मी मेरे को वही वाला करना है ज्वाइन, प्लीज मेरे को करवा दो, मेरा हो जाएगा, मैं पक्का कह रहा हूं मेरा सिलेक्शन हो जाएगा, वो वाले बस फीस, इंस्टीट्यूट की फीस दे दो. ऐसे थोड़ी ना होता है, प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड. कोई कह रहा है सिलेक्शन छीन के ले लेंगे, अबे छीन के लेगा, पहले तैयारी तो कर ढंग से, छीन के ले लेंगे, बेवकूफ. इसीलिए ये सब चीजों से दूर रहिएगा, छीन के ले लेंगे. कड़ी तपस्या से ही सक्सेस हासिल होता है, ऐसा होता है ना तुम्हारे यूट्यूब वगैरह के ऊपर, यही सब लिखा होता है ना, फालतू की बकवास. एनीवे, सो व्हाट आर बेसिक प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ पब्लिक लाइफ, इलस्ट्रेट एनी 3 of these with suitable examples. Another question from the past. ठीक है. What do you understand by the term public servant? Reflect on the expected role of a public servant. वही सब सेम कहानी है. These are all previous year questions है ना, पहले क्या है. What is meant by conflict of interest? Illustrate with examples. Right? Anyway, so we'll take a break. There are 2-3 other topics also. I'll just give you again orientation. See, some topics like this, foundational values, ethical dilemmas, are more about your thinking than knowledge. And I will show it to you. We'll spend a bit of time on ethics in international relations questions, corporate governance वगैरह की भी कुछ examples देखेंगे, how to go about solving them. So we'll take a 5 minutes break and then we'll resume again. Okay.
then it is rectangle. Trellis pattern. What happens in trellis? In case of trellis pattern, the main river flows straight without the tributaries at right angle. Main river is flowing straight, not facing in direction, whereas the tributaries are going at right angle. This is possible. The main river flows in a rift valley. Rift valley is more deeper. So it's not the actual river valley of this river. This is the rift valley which is already existing. The river has this main spot in this rift. That is why even though Narmada is flowing in the rift valley, Narmada is not a very big river. Rift valley is much wider. Narmada का जो valley है बहुत deeper है, बहुत wide है. इसका capacity नहीं है Narmada. Valley is not created by the erosion of the valley. Valley is already created by the rifting action. इसके वजह से ये तो पूरा सीधा ही जाएगा डायरेक्शन में. Both Narmada and Tapi as I said previously. Radial pattern. What happens with radial pattern? Let's say there is a mist. From the different sides of the mist, the river originates and flows in different directions. At its origin, they may be originating from the same place, but they are all flowing in different directions. If we take the aerial view, take the aerial, it appears like the rivers are originating, they are all this is the radial example. Amarkantak around the border of the Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, the high elevated plateau. From Amarkantak, we have Narmada river, as well as river, as well as Narmada, and something is all the three are originating from, all the three goes in different directions. Narmada is a separate river. Zone is the tributary of Ganga. Brahman is the tributary of. This is the example of radial. Parallel trend, where the rivers are continuously flowing parallel to zero earth. They independently drain to the parallel. there are many Western rivers that are originating from the western side of Western Ghats. They all almost parallel to each other, drain directly into Arabian Sea. Characteristic of a river called as drainage pattern. Flow characteristic of a river called as drainage pattern. Dendritic pattern. The difference mechanical Marian river that is the dendritic. Peninsula rivers are rectangular. Dendritic pattern. It appears like branches from tree. Appears like branches from tree. Characterized by standard structural factors. Characterized Ganga system. Indus system. Rectangular pattern.
Let's look at some of the other questions as well that have been asked in last 3 years from other topics. The other topics are not as you don't have scope for a lot of creativity in those topics. Foundational values of civil services, ethical dilemma, etc. related questions. They are less knowledge centric. These ones are still knowledge centric to a certain extent. Let's have a look at that. So the first question that was asked this year, last year in fact, in the mains examination was that Russia and Ukraine war has been going on for the last 7 months. Has been going on for the last 7 months. Where is my pen? Okay. Has been going on for the last 7 months. Different countries have taken independent stands and actions keeping in view their own national interests. So different countries have taken different stands, we know, with respect to the Ukraine-Russian conflict. We are all aware that the war has its own impact on different aspects of society, including human tragedy, because there is a lot of loss of lives, property, environmental resources as a result of war. Then, what are those ethical issues that are crucial to be considered while launching the war and its continuation so far? Now see, this, when it's saying what are those ethical issues that are crucial to be considered while launching the war and its continuation so far, one interpretation of this could be that it is asking about war in general, or what I would like to think is that it is asking us about the war, which is the Russian-Ukraine war. I would like to believe that's what the examiner is intending to ask. You can take a general interpretation as well, but it's up to you. So it says that what are those ethical issues that are crucial to be considered while launching the war and its continuation so far. Illustrate with justifications the ethical issues involved given in the given states of affair. What are the ethical justifications that have been given by different nations for different purposes? So few things that we need to again break down the question first. See what is it, what the question is saying. It is saying that Russia and Ukraine war has been going on for the last 7 months. Different countries have taken independent stands and actions, keeping in view their own national interests. And then it is talking about the ethical dimensions or challenges that are thrown up as a result of war. What are those ethical issues that are crucial to be considered while launching the war? And its continuation so far. So, you have to relate this. What are the stands that have been taken? One, you will have to talk about stands that have been taken or action that have been taken by various nations. इसमें ज़्यादा analysis की ज़रूरत है actually इन questions में, because ये थोड़े से complicated हैं. So stands and action that have been taken by various nations. One, what are the ethical issues which are involved in continuing and initiating the war? Ethical issues involved in continuing and initiating the war. And then it says, illustrate with justification the ethical issues involved in the given state of affair. Right, so what are the ethical issues which are involved in continuing and initiating the war? And you have to also talk about ethical issues. Sorry, you have to also talk about, I don't know how to go back. Okay, it's complicated for me. Anyway, so ethical issues which are involved in the stands that have been taken by various nations. And you must also highlight this aspect that the stands that are taken by various nations are in their national interest, but that also creates at times ethical issues. Right? So now you have to write your answer within this 4 wall. अब देखिए अप्रोच ऐसे करना है, पहले आपने अपने दिमाग, अब दिस यू कांट डू दिस इन द एग्जाम ना, पूरा पहले लिख लिया सब कुछ फिर करेंगे, but you have to reach that stage that when I look at the question, I underline these basic things in my question paper, and then I think of what should be the structure. So now after this, the next step is to write down the structure. How will I begin? How will I give arguments? How will I be able to write about all these things and then be able to conclude? So one is that what are the stands that have been taken. So पहले तो हम ये सोच लेंगे अच्छा stands क्या क्या लिए हैं. एक stand तो जैसे इंडिया का stand है, moral stand है हमारा कि गलत है, हम वोट नहीं कर सकते देखिए रशिया के खिलाफ at UN because of our own national interest. They are an ally. They are a very important strategic partner for India, a defense ally, an economic partner. We can't leave them. It's not possible for us. We are dependent on them. Possibly if we were not, maybe we could have thought, but there are so many projects which are ongoing with them in partnership. There is so much technology transfer which is happening from Russia, and then Russia has been a long-standing ally of India for a very long time. India has one of the largest embassies in Russia, in Moscow. We have a huge diplomatic presence in that country. We can't afford to be alienating them in any way. But then it says that, so that is India's stance. One stance is that of countries such as America, which started to provide aid. In what form? Military aid, right? Military aid to Ukraine, that is one. The other is China, which started to provide military aid, वो भी military aid का ही form है, to Russia or to support to Russia. There is third perspective as well, which is isolation. European Union, they are saying we will isolate them. No flights, nothing, no interaction. That is the third one. So you have to first think of stands, and then you have to think what are the ethical issues involved in these stands. You must first talk about that these countries have taken these stands because of their national interest. Each one of them are taking these stands according to national interest. But you may justify India's stand that we have taken it in national interest, but at the same time, we are not justifying the unethical. We know that the war is wrong. We know that it has great consequences. And we have, in no unclear terms, very clearly, we have stated to Russia that this is wrong. Even in the statement that was issued by India at the UN, after abstaining to vote, we issued a very strong statement against the war and what Russia has done in Ukraine. Nowhere you will see that India has supported. See, because we believe in the values of Panchsheel. So you may write about those things as well. That what are the justifications for India's stand? इंडिया के स्टैंड पे ज्यादा फोकस कीजिएगा, नेगेटिव पे मत जाइएगा ज्यादा कि यूएस इसलिए कर रहा है क्योंकि वो तो करता ही है ऐसा. चाइना तो हमारा दुश्मन ही है तो करेगा ही, गंदे काम करता है वो, ऐसे नहीं लिखना है ना. थिंक ऑफ हाउ यू कैन टेल द एग्जामिनर दैट यू कैन बी अ फ्यूचर डिप्लोमैट. You will tell that see China is doing this. Have you seen our external affairs minister talking? वो ऐसा कभी नहीं बोलेंगे कि मतलब ये यूएस ऐसा है, गंदा है, चाइना गंदा है, गुंडा है चाइना, ये थोड़ा ना बोल रहे हैं वो. He's saying that see this is what our stand is. Why do we believe in that? Because we believe in peaceful resolution of international conflicts. We believe in international law. We believe in the policy of Panchsheel. We believe in non-interference in the affairs of the others. We believe in resolution of disputes through a dialogue process. So you mention that, why India has taken that stand. And then you must also talk about what are the ethical issues in this. Because of some countries either justifying the war or not strongly acting against this, or because of not expressly telling what their view on this war is, it has created a number of ethical issues, right? So let's have a look at what are some of the pointers which you can write down, and then you may end by talking about how in the longer run we should address this particular issue. Maybe just IR की नॉलेज लगाकर आप थोड़ा सा इसको लिख सकते हैं, पर उसको एथिक्स के पर्सपेक्टिव से लिखिएगा फिर से. पीस, ह्यूमैनिटी, universal values, talk about those, compassion, universal humanism, right? You may talk about that India believes Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. That is what our philosophy is. Our civilizational philosophy is that only. Today we may be forgetting that, but that is where we come from. We believe that the entire world is a village, entire world is our home. We need to promote respect for human rights. We need to promote respect for the rule of law. We must conduct ourselves in a non-violent manner. So you may mention those. So ethical perspective से लिखिएगा, ये मत लिखिएगा कि countries should come together, UN should be doing this and that. ये फिर किसका आंसर हो जाएगा? IR का आंसर हो जाएगा. आपको ethics का आंसर लिखना है, तो ethical values की बात कीजिएगा. Examples draw कीजिएगा कुछ पहले से. You may talk about that a war, continuation of war or initiation of war was justified on the grounds that it will end the war, but no war in the past has ever ended any war. For example, the First World War. Right? आपके पास सारा कंटेंट है, बट उसको किस तरीके से यूज करना है, रिलेट करना है इन डिफरेंट टॉपिक्स, दैट इज व्हाट यू हैव टू लर्न. You get the point? So let's move on to see a few things. And what is some of the content which can go into this answer? ये थोड़े content heavy answers हैं, but फिर भी है आंसर ethics का, IR का आंसर नहीं है. Please remember that. So it says that The first wave of international response to invasion came in form of moral or political support for Ukraine, ethical condemnation of Russia's action, but nothing much more was done than this. This was morally correct, but there was no action. So अब देखिए, अब आप बोलिएगा कि without deeds, words have no value. Ethics लेकर आइएगा इसमें. The actions of these countries may have been justified on that stand, but they are actually just mere hollow words. Right? I'm just saying that. Okay. Then you may talk about next level of response was to impose a series of non-intercourse acts with the Russia, travel ban, etc. and all of that. But see, then you may say that isolation of Russia, isolation may have been a short-term measure. But in the longer run, the devastation continues to happen. And they have found their way around it. और आप ये भी लिख सकते हैं that in a globalized world, isolation is not possible. It is only a figment of imagination. We know about it. रशिया को आइसोलेट कर दिया यूरोपियन यूनियन ने, ऐसा वो क्लेम कर रहे हैं. क्या जेन्युइनली हुआ है ये? वो अब हमसे तेल खरीद रहे हैं. राइट? वी आर बाइंग फ्रॉम रशिया, दे आर बाइंग फ्रॉम अस. वाह. So unethical behavior still remains, the conduct of war continues to happen, because so you may say that this isolationist strategy is also not something which is going to work in the longer run. Then the third one, this too is even a bigger problem. Violence begets violence. This is that approach. And then you may bring in Gandhi's views. An eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. You may talk about that. For example, there are, देखिए examples history से draw कर सकते हैं, that violent movements or violent protests or violent supporting violence against violence has never resolved any conflict. Look at insurgency in Northeast. Have we been able to overcome it? No. Insurgency in Northeast जहां जहां हमने कर्ब किया है, वो सिर्फ डायलॉग से हुआ है, पॉलिटिकल प्रोसेस से हुआ है. मिजोरम only through political process. Almost 20 साल 25 साल वहां इंसर्जेंसी चली. रेजोल्यूशन कैसे हुआ? पॉलिटिकल प्रोसेस से. त्रिपुरा पॉलिटिकल प्रोसेस. So give that example, or maybe talk about our freedom movement only, that even though, so you may also write that India may show the way to the world from what it has done in the past. चाइना या यूएस या और कंट्रीज को क्रिटिसाइज करने में मत लग जाइएगा. एग्जामिनर चाहता है कि आप पॉजिटिव एटीट्यूड के आदमी हैं कि नहीं. आपको हर चीज में गड़बड़ दिख रही है, आप गलत बस उसी चीज पे फोकस कर रहे हैं. देखिए, बिल्कुल ऑब्जर्व करना चाहिए कि कौन गलत कर रहा है, बट आंसर में जहां आपके पास इतना लिमिटेड स्पेस और टाइम है, आप उसको पॉजिटिव बताने की जगह नेगेटिव बता रहे हो. You are, instead of telling that what India can show and what Indians are doing or what values we can learn from India in this issue, you are talking about what America is doing wrong. Don't do that. Right? So these are some of the responses. What are some of the ethical issues involved in initiation and continuation of war? Are Russia's action a challenge to sovereignty of a nation? ये एक ethical issue है. Is Russia justified in killing of civilians? Has this war led to a refugee crisis? Should violence be dealt with violence? Would providing arms and support prolong the war? Are there dangers of nuclear war as well? Mention those things as ethical issues. Then I have mentioned a few things as well here, that we have accepted the ethical obligation that we must respond to assist Ukraine, but how we assist has to be balanced against both ethical and strategic consequences of dealing with a power that has nuclear capabilities. देखिए कितना अच्छे से ये बात लिखी है ना, that we should not deal with this in such a manner कि हम बिल्कुल रशिया को push to the wall और brink पे लाके खड़ा कर दें और nuclear war हो जाए. We don't want an Armageddon. We don't want that situation. So we have to find ethical as well as strategic answers to this. But ये पेपर स्ट्रेटजी का नहीं है. This paper is about ethical. So then it says that this is not merely a fear lurking in the background. For example, Putin has threatened that Russia would be prepared. So you don't need to mention all of this in detail, but I'm just saying this threat must be a consideration in any ethical and strategic calculations. The North Star of statement must always be prudence, not emotionalism, but prudence, and we have a terrifying reason to proceed cautiously. So something like that you must mention in your conclusion. I'm just mentioning this broad idea as a conclusion. I hope you get the sense of how you have to write answers in this. But please remember, this is ethics in international relations, ethical issues in international relations, not IR. So please don't write things like UNSC should come in and we should form a peace committee and this and that, all those IR wale solutions. This is an ethical issue. Think of it from the ethical perspective. Is this clear? Any questions related to this? Anyone has any doubts related to this? Can we go ahead? Now let's look at the next question. Refugees should not be turned back to the country where they would face persecution or human right violation. This is a statement given कि जो refugees हैं इस process को कुछ कहते हैं. We will have a look at it. Of refusing the refugees. So refugees should not be sent back to the nation where they are going to face persecution, right? For example, when persecution of the Bengalis was happening in East Pakistan, on human grounds we decided that we can't turn them back. If we turn them back, they will be killed. They'll be done. So if there is a refugee crisis that has to be created, it is a crisis for the humanity. It is a crisis for the entire world. We should look beyond our national boundaries. We should look at the idea of making the world a better place. Please remember, हर जगह इंडिया 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 के सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट मत लिखिएगा. एथिक्स का पेपर है. ह्यूमैनिटेरियन कंसर्न भी तो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है. और हम ये बोल रहे हैं that India is going to show the path to the world. क्या ऐसा पाथ शो करेगा कि हम सेल्फिश हो जाएंगे, सिर्फ अपने इंटरेस्ट की बात करेंगे? नहीं. दिस इज नॉट व्हाट आर वैल्यूज आर. दिस इज नॉट व्हाट आर सिविलाइजेशनल वैल्यूज आर. हम नहीं इसमें बिलीव करते. वी बिलीव इन अ डिफरेंट वे ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंसिंग people. Anyway, so this says that examine the statement with reference to ethical dimensions being violated by the nations claiming to be democratic with open society. So when certain nations refuse to take the refugees, when they claim to be democratic societies, while claiming to be democratic societies, what are some of the ethical issues that are involved in this? So we know that number of European nations, for example, refuse to take refugees from Syria. What are their justifications? What are the so वो भी justification भी लिखना जरूरी है. Ethical dilemma भी दिखाना जरूरी है. Why do these nations refuse to take the refugees? What are the justification that they give? They do not have enough resources or unlimited resources. You know, we for example said that see, we would want to help the Rohingyas, but we can't take all of them. We have our own limitations. What else? और क्या concern है? National security concerns are also there. Demographic change is also one concern, that it may create conflicts within our own country. Right? Refugee crisis from East Pakistan led to insurgency in Northeast. This is one of the reasons for insurgency in Northeast, because it altered the demography. Say for example, Assam insurgency was due to the refugee crisis as well to a large extent. So we can't afford to affect our national security or our communal peace and harmony. And ultimately, there is another idea that countries are all formed on the idea of citizenship, where they give first priority to their own citizens. So we are not able to take care of our own citizens, and you are saying कि बाहर वाले भी ले लो. So those are reasons. But then, when countries that say that we are democratic and refuse to take the refugees, then that also creates dimension, ethical issues and dimensions. So let's look at those particular points. So what is the broad so the principle of no refoulement, that is what it is called as when you don't take the refugees. So the principle of no refoulement is the cornerstone of asylum and of international refuge law. This, so refoulement basically means that you turn back a person. No refoulement is that you do not turn back a refugee. This principle reflects that commitment of international community to ensure to all persons the enjoyment of human rights, including rights to life, freedom, torture, cruelty, etc. and all of that. So this is the principle on the basis of which international law is made. I am not saying that this should be your introduction. I am not saying that this should be there in your content, but I am saying that this idea should be reflected in your content in some way. That in refugee crisis, countries should act in such a manner. Do you get the point? Right? So let's proceed further. It says that basic human rights, एक तो ethical issues क्या है? Basic human rights may get violated as a result of the turning back of the refugees. We must understand that human rights, basic human rights, are universal in nature and are not restricted to one nation. And we must learn to look beyond our own national boundaries as well if we want the world to be a much more peaceful and a safer place to live in. Ultimately, that is what our goal should be, all of us as nations, and not just our own national interest all the time. Right? Then another ethical dimension is that there is a humanitarian responsibility of the countries, that if these people are going to become stateless, they will be forced to live in worst of the conditions. Should that not affect those countries which profess democratic values such as justice, equality, liberty? What about, why only talk about your own liberty, but what about the liberty of others? Then you may write about doubts have been raised over, will be raised over concept of global citizenship and shared responsibility of the states. Though countries helping each other in terms of financial resources, there is still a stiff resistance to accept migrants and refugees even among developed countries, etc. Then you may write about lack of empathy towards asylum seeker. It also raises serious questions on democratic values of these countries, as this step of refoulement shows lack of empathy. It shows lack of belief in justice. It shows lack of belief in liberty. It shows lack of belief in equality. Right? So those kind of things you will write. Arguments such as drain on economic resources, fear of loss of jobs, etc. further amidst refugee crisis. Many European countries, USA, etc. even India have denied entry to refugees to ground, and that may lead to infiltration of religious extremists in their country, thus putting countries at risk, etc. and all of that. What are the reasons that, what are the reasons? So even though sending back refugees by countries is against the UN Declaration of Human Rights, however, many a times countries are also within their right to refuse asylum to the refugee seekers because of these reasons. Now see, again, weaving the answer is important here. You must first talk about, in introduction you could talk about that refugee crisis has been created in several parts of the world due to various dictatorial regimes and the persecution of religious or various minorities in different parts of the world. This has created a situation where some countries have decided to turn down the refugees, which is the very basis of the international law. वही सब जो चीज मैंने पहले बोली. फिर then you will say that this action of some of these democratic countries raise serious ethical concerns, and then you mention those ethical concerns. And then if you go back to the question again, it says that examine this statement with reference to ethical dimensions being violated by the nations claiming to be democratic, and then in the end you may talk about that how this can be resolved, how the world needs to come together. Again, don't write an IR answer, please. Write an ethics answer. So again you talk about that we must learn from how India acted in 71, or we may, all the nations may come together and work on the idea of universal humanism. At the same time, actions must be taken to stop the persecution of these people in their countries. But again, ethical aspect से लिखिएगा उसको, right? So this particular question, तो ethics in IR के ऊपर बहुत सवाल पूछ रहा है वो अभी. We'll have a look at that. Let's have a look at one more question. Discuss the role of ethics and values in enhancing the following three major components of comprehensive national powers, that is human capital, soft power and social harmony. And social harmony. So there are three components, primarily it says that, of comprehensive national power, which is human capital, soft power and social harmony. And it says that how the ethics and values can help in enhancing this. So now please again pay attention to the question. It is saying that how ethics can play an important role in enlarging the comprehensive national power, which on three dimensions: soft power, human capital, and social harmony. Actually, to be honest, this question is not so much of ethics in IR, but generally with respect to how a country should focus on these, on ethical aspect to achieve these certain things. But you must also bring in certain aspects of international relations here. So for example, first you must begin by talking about that usually comprehensive national power in today's time is only understood to be military power. But that is not the only component. There are various other aspects of comprehensive national power, which includes soft power. What is the influence of your culture, of your movies, of your songs, of your food, of your traditions on rest of the world? What is the influence of your ideas on rest of the world? Influence of ideas भी तो है comprehensive national power का part, कि आज हम दुनिया भर की कुछ ethical values को shape करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. कैसे? By telling them about इंडिया ने कैसे shape किया, देखिए अपनी soft power से comprehensive national power को. नॉन वायलेंस की जो हमारी वैल्यू है, जो हमारी फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल को which guided, has inspired so many other countries and their freedom struggle, that today we have our very strong relationship with them because of these shared values. South Africa, one example. तो मिलिट्री पावर ही सब कुछ नहीं होती. ह्यूमन कैपिटल इज ऑल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. ट्रेनिंग people, educating them, making them capable so that they can contribute to the greater growth of the nation. But this human capital, again, you must explain, should be in ethical dimensions, in an ethical manner. Then social harmony. This also is a part of, if within the country, communities and religions and people are fighting with each other, how can you say that you are a powerful nation? Because you are within weak. You are weak within, है ना? आप अंदर से ही टूटे हुए हैं, तो आप क्या नेशनल पावर दिखाएंगे? तो अगर बाहर से कोई देश आप पे अटैक कर देगा, तो आप क्या करेंगे फिर? Right? When we speak in one voice as a nation, when we speak about one single idea, when we do not differ on our international policy, that is when we will be truly powerful. Because you must explain that power must not only be seen as military power, but power to make world a more peaceful place. Power must be seen to make the world a better place. Power must be seen as a way to spread our ideas. तो आप इसमें एग्जाम्पल्स दीजिएगा. जैसे अगर हम सॉफ्ट पावर की बात करें, I told you some examples, and you must also give examples from India, specifically from India, of how we have focused on these aspects. और negative aspects भी आप कुछ mention कर सकते हैं. You may talk about, for example, that China, because it has acted in a certain manner in certain African countries, it does not have the soft power in these countries, and it is looked at in an adverse manner. So it may be powerful militarily, but it does not have good relation with various countries. Is that any power? Power is when you have, so you must mention, power तब होती है जब आपके फ्रेंड ज्यादा होते हैं और एनिमीज कम. यही तो पावर होती है भाई. आप कॉलेज के अंदर हैं एंड आपने जो सबसे पावरफुल आदमी है उसके साथ, मतलब सबसे हट्टा खट्टा जो है उसके साथ दोस्ती कर ली, तो आपको कहें अपनी मिलिट्री, अपनी डोले शोले बनाने की जरूरत है ना आपके पास एक दोस्त. यू गेटिंग इट? पावर तब होगी जब कॉलेज के अंदर आपने सबसे स्मार्ट दोस्त भी बना लिया, सबसे इंटेलिजेंट जो लड़का है आपकी क्लास में या लड़की है, आपने उसको दोस्त बना लिया. या कोई भी दिक्कत आएगी, कुछ भी प्रॉब्लम होगी क्वेश्चंस में, किसी भी टॉपिक में, तो उसके बाद चले जाऊंगा. ये भी तो पावर है. पावर ये थोड़ी ना है कि खुद ही जिम में लगे हुए हैं. पावर इज नॉट दैट. सो थिंक ऑफ इट दैट वे. सो चाइना is only focusing on military power, but it does not have soft power. India has soft power as well. We have power to influence the policies of various nations, not in a forceful manner, but by convincing them with our values and our ideas. That is example of comprehensive national power. So it says that how ethics can play an important role. अब वहां पे वो लाना है ethics. So for example, what are the things that you can be mentioning here? So let's see. अच्छा, इसमें I have not mentioned few things. So anyway, so the points which you can mention here is, you can mention about when we talk about India's soft power, say for example, movies. You may talk about Indian values, non-violence. You may talk about the Indian idea of treating world as a village. These ethical values can shape our soft power. Then ethical values such as investing in, so social harmony की बात करता है, how it can enhance our comprehensive national power ethically. We must focus on fraternity, we must focus on equality, we must focus on building an inclusive society. We must focus on giving equal opportunity to people, especially those who are downtrodden sections. That will also increase our comprehensive national power. You must also mention that India can only become a powerful nation when we are able to utilize all our human resources effectively. For that, we will have to focus on the idea of equity. You may give example that in India, the labor workforce participation for women is very low. We need to include them in the labor force so that we have more hands to work and more minds to contribute to the growth of the economy. That will make us a powerful nation. We must include the Hindus and the Muslims and the Christians and the tribals and the scheduled castes and the Parsis and the Jews and everyone. Only when there is social harmony, we would be able to make ourselves a powerful nation. So we must focus on the ideas of secularism. We must focus on the ideas of diversity. ये सब ethical values ही तो हैं. Diversity. So that we can, but diversity है, but still focus on the idea of having one single identity as a Indian first. But we must, there is no need for you to forget your identity of being a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or a Jain or a Buddhist. But your first identity must that be of an Indian. So idea of fraternity. Right? So write about those things. Again, ethical perspective se likhiyega, please. Right? Can we move further? Any questions? Okay, let's move on to the next question. Next one is, the will to power exists, but it can be tamed and can be guided by rationality and principles of moral duty. Examine this statement in context of international relations. So see, again, what this statement is saying, pehle wo samjhiyega. The will to power exists, but it can be tamed and be guided by rationality and principles of moral duty. Examine this statement in context of IR. Can anyone explain to me what this is trying to say? In simple words, in your own words. Yes, sir. Yes. So you must say that what he's saying, that every nation is trying to increase its power, but often it is only seen as military interventions, increasing the defense power, increasing the number of rockets and this and that and missiles and everything, you know. But it says that it should be guided by rationality, but it can be tamed and should be guided by rationality and principles of moral duty. You can mention that Hitler was also trying to increase his power in a military manner, but what did it lead to? Devastation. It led to devastation. So we should not, so आपको example दीजिए, so we should not be guided by that idea of increasing power. Rather, we can be guided by the idea of ethics and morals. And फिर examples दीजिए फिर से. इंडिया का example दीजिए, पंचशील policy of India, गुजराल डॉक्ट्रीन. भाई वो भी तो हमारा पावर इंक्रीज करने का ही तरीका है, गुजराल डॉक्ट्रीन, where we are saying that we will be more magnanimous towards our smaller neighbors, of course not Pakistan, but towards our other smaller nations, our neighbors, Bhutan, Nepal, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Afghanistan. We must be more magnanimous. We should not expect anything in return from them. We should give them, because we are a bigger nation. That will help us increase our power only. That will help us increase our power. How? We will be able to develop strong relationship with them. Where we lack, we can take their help. जहां हम कम हैं, वहां पे हम उनकी मदद ले सकते हैं. अगर हम कोई चीज बनाते हैं और वो कोई चीज बनाते हैं, तो हम देख सकते हैं कि क्या हम कोई मटेरियल प्रोड्यूस करते हैं जिसको हम उनको एक्सपोर्ट कर सकते हैं, या क्या वो कोई एक चीज ऐसी बनाते हैं जो हम उसको यूज कर सकते हैं फॉर आवर फर्दर प्रोडक्शन. कुड बी समथिंग लाइक दैट. इकोनॉमिक, it could be that if we approach it this way, we'll be able to make more allies, and we'll be able to spread our ideas of non-violence, of trying to ensure global peace, respect for international law. ये सब चीजें लिखिएगा प्लीज अपने आंसर्स में. डोंट जस्ट राइट IR नहीं लिखना है इसमें. एथिकल पेपर है तो एथिक्स के पर्सपेक्टिव से लिखिएगा, है ना. सो लेट्स सी the power equations in IR is usually seen as a zero-sum game, where loss of one is usually seen as gain of other, and vice versa. In this context, every nation is in the race to accumulate more power, including hard power as well as soft power. The will to power exists to exert influence in one's favor in the bilateral relations, multilateral institutions, and in the issues that hold equal importance for all the nations. The resistance to UNSC reforms is a prime example of this, जो ethical consideration से driven नहीं है, but jealousy से driven है. However, at time, या फिर exclusionary policy से driven है, exclusionist principle से. So, however, at times rationalism and moral duty towards their people against the other nation citizens leads to nations taking opposing stands and not respecting each other's territorial integrity and principles of mutual cooperation, etc. आप example दे सकते हैं, जैसे कि countries जो हैं ethical perspective से नहीं driven होती, but अपने narrow self interest से. आप टेररिज्म की बात कर सकते हैं कि वैसे तो टेररिज्म कंडेम करती हैं कंट्रीज, बट एट द सेम टाइम दे डोंट टेक एनी स्टांस अगेंस्ट टेररिज्म. दे डोंट हैव एनी प्रॉब्लम विद नेशन सपोर्टिंग टेररिज्म ऑन देयर ओन टेरिटरी. दैट्स एन एग्जांपल ऑफ हाउ पावर शुड नॉट बी एक्सरसाइज्ड. रादर देन यू गिव एग्जांपल्स. However, considering the global commons, the will to power needs to be replaced by rationality. ये कंक्लूजन होगा, पर बीच में आप और बहुत सारी चीजें लिखेंगे. You will write about how power should be driven, and a country should try to become more powerful through ethical ways, through soft power, through developing more allies, through being more magnanimous towards its neighbors. Gujarat doctrine, for example, through supporting non-intervention in the territory of the others and supporting peaceful resolution of issues through international law. By developing or fostering mutual respect for each other, by trying to promote world as one, by trying to move beyond and transcend beyond the boundaries of nations and to look at the problems of humanity. Because what is the use of power if you can't make the lives of human beings better? What is the use of that power? It is useless. You can again bring in so many aspects. आप यहां पे ला सकते हैं महाभारत, कि भाई पावर not used properly is worse than being weak, because at least the weak can say that I don't have any power, but if you have power and if you don't use it properly, then you are committing a sin. तब आप गलत कर रहे हैं ना, आपके पास एबिलिटी है कुछ अच्छा करने की, आप वो भी नहीं होने दे रहे, right? So those are the aspects that you can mention in this question. Is this clear? Can we move further? Yes. Yes, we played a very important role in allowing the people of Bangladesh to have the right for self-determination, but we only supported them in this. We, once this was done, moved out of it, and we allowed the people of Bangladesh to decide their future and their destiny. Yes, good example. So think in that sense, right? ये थोड़ा सा ethics in IR जो है easy topic है, but दो चीजें हैं, एक तो क्वेश्चन समझना और दूसरा अपनी आईआर की नॉलेज को एथिक्स के साथ मैरी करना, राइट? नाउ लेट्स मूव ऑन क्विकली टू गवर्नेंस रिलेटेड एथिक्स के क्वेश्चन जो आते हैं. देखिए मेरे हिसाब से ये सबसे सिंपल क्वेश्चन होते हैं, इनकी अगर आप बेसिक तैयारी कर लेंगे बहुत आसान है, क्योंकि ये जो गवर्नेंस में हम टॉपिक्स पढ़ते हैं उन्हीं को बस थोड़ा सा और एथिकल पर्सपेक्टिव से लिख देना है, दैट्स इट. सो लेट्स लुक एट दिस. सो अब देखिए कितना सिंपल क्वेश्चन है. इंपैक्ट ऑफ डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी एज रिलायबल सोर्स ऑफ इनपुट फॉर रैशनल डिसीजन मेकिंग इज अ डिबेटेबल इशू. सो टुडे आपका आंसर का इंट्रोडक्शन ही वहां से स्टार्ट हो सकता है, दैट टुडे सो मेनी डिसीजंस ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट आर ड्रिवन बाय द हेल्प ऑफ डेटा, आर ड्रिवन बाय द हेल्प ऑफ एनालिसिस ऑफ डेटा. So many things. Can you give me examples of how government is taking decisions on the basis of data? Sorry? MG Narega, okay, JAM Trinity, और better examples दीजिए. Environmental impact assessment, क्या वो use of data और technology नहीं है for better decision making? Yes. Direct benefit transfers. Role of artificial intelligence in avoiding duplication of beneficiaries, very good. Use of surveillance through CCTV etc. with the aim of ensuring national security. Yes, Hanji. Sorry? ONDC in e-commerce. So anyway, the point is so that impact of digital technology as a reliable source of, अब देखिए इसमें एक इंटरेस्टिंग चीज है, रिलायबल सोर्स ऑफ इनपुट फॉर रैशनल डिसीजन मेकिंग है. रैशनल डिसीजन मेकिंग है ना, सिर्फ टेक्नोलॉजी की बात नहीं करनी है, डिसीजन मेकिंग में कैसे हेल्प हो रहा है विद द हेल्प ऑफ द टेक्नोलॉजी, विद द हेल्प ऑफ डेटा. कैसे? बिकॉज द गवर्नमेंट इज एबल टू सीक फीडबैक फ्रॉम पीपल एंड मेक बेटर डिसीजंस. मैं ये एक्सपेक्ट कर रहा था आपसे. गवर्नमेंट इज एबल, आपने मेरे को भी जो है इधर उधर घुमा दिया है ना. So that is what has to be written, that government is getting data, analyzing that and able to understand problems of people better. Government is, say for example, again reliable source of input for rational decision making. Whether we should focus on primary education or higher education, policy, as he said, socio-economic policies, but examples दीजिएगा. Whether we should focus on, say for example, development in the rural areas or in the urban areas, isn't this a decision to be made by a policy maker? How will you take this decision if you don't have technology? How is technology helping you? GIS, GPS is helping you decide that if you have to interlink rivers, it is help whether that is possible or not. It is helping us. So again, this how technology is helping us take decisions whether we should make a dam at a particular place or not. We are doing environmental impact assessment for that to determine the ecological impacts to make better decisions. So give some examples like that, right? And then of course you must also talk about that it helps in better transparency, helps in objective analysis, better communication and spread of information, etc. But then it says it's a debatable issue. You have to critically evaluate. So first you may mention about advantages, and then you may mention about some of the issues, or you may go the other way. mention first in brief in your introduction some advantages of technology in decision making, but then you must mention about the disadvantages first, concerns first, but then come back and say that all said and done, it has helped in this much, in these ways. Yes, there are concerns, there are some issues which can be addressed in this following way. So, for example, what are the issues? Unverified sources of information on the basis of which often governments may take information. टेक्नोलॉजी है तो अब ट्विटर है. देखिए डिसीजन मेकिंग में कैसे हेल्प हो रहा है, ट्विटर के थ्रू पुलिस को पता चल जा रहा है कि कहां पे क्या प्रॉब्लम्स है, लोग रिपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, एमईए को रिपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, लोग रेलवेज को रिपोर्ट कर रहे हैं. बट आप ये बोलिएगा कि कई बार लोग फेक चीजें भी डालते हैं फॉर डिफरेंट रीजंस. सो अनवेरिफाइबल इंफॉर्मेशन, वेरासिटी नहीं पता है हमें ऑफ द इश्यूज विच आर देयर, देन इट कैन नॉट रिप्लेस कन्वेंशनल source of data. What is conventional source of data? People to people interaction. You will never be able to get to know the problems of people through Twitter. You have to step onto the ground. So you mentioned that it is again debatable. It's a debatable issue. Then false inputs may go in. See, you may make a model to decide whether we should create a dam here or not. But what if you have not put the inputs properly, or the algorithm that you have designed itself is flawed? Then what? You may give example of how if the CCTV has been biometric and CCTV is used, let's say, for identification of criminals in public places. By matching that data with the database of the criminals that the police has. ये हो रहा है आजकल by the way. पर इसमें प्रॉब्लम है क्या? False positives है कि नहीं है? So you mention about that. False positives is a problem. अमेरिका के अंदर उन्होंने एक स्टडी किया कि हम देखते हैं कि जो क्रिमिनल्स हैं उनके डेटाबेस के साथ वी विल मैच द डेटा ऑफ द फेसेस ऑफ द कांग्रेसमैन जो अमेरिकन पार्लियामेंट में लोग हैं. एंड दे फाउंड दैट देयर वर अ लार्ज नंबर ऑफ कांग्रेसमैन हु अकॉर्डिंग टू द सॉफ्टवेयर टर्न्ड आउट टू बी क्रिमिनल्स. बिकॉज जो टेक्नोलॉजी है उसके अपनी लिमिटेशंस है ना, वो फॉल्स पॉजिटिव दिखा दे रहा है. वो बोल रहे हैं हाँ ये ट्रंप जो है क्रिमिनल है, इसने 5 मर्डर किए हैं. अब शक्ल मिलती होगी किसी से, टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं डिसाइफर कर पा रही है कि ये ट्रंप है या कौन है. ओबामा बहुत बड़ा टेररिस्ट है, अल कायदा में लोगों को रिक्रूट कर रहा था, किसी और की शक्ल से किसी और की शक्ल मिला दी टेक्नोलॉजी ने. फॉल्स पॉजिटिव्स. यू गेट द पॉइंट है ना. किसी दिन ओबामा के घर पे पहुंच गया कि सर आपका नाम आ गया इसमें. पता चला है कि आप आईसिस के साथ जुड़े हुए हैं. फॉल्स पॉजिटिव्स, राइट. देन ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज, वी मस्ट नॉट इग्नोर ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज, द एंशिएंट विजडम दैट शुड नॉट बी left out while taking decisions. And you must also mention टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ एक सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम क्या, एथिक्स के पर्सपेक्टिव से सोचिएगा. क्या वो ह्यूमन है? क्या उसमें इमोशन है, कंपैशन है? तो वो देखेगा कि इस औरत ने अप्लाई किया राशन कार्ड के लिए, इसका जो है डॉक्यूमेंटेशन कंप्लीट नहीं है, नहीं मिलेगा राशन कार्ड. एक मियर टेक्निकलिटी के बेसिस के ऊपर ये टेक्नोलॉजी ने डिसीजन ले दिया और उसकी एप्लीकेशन रिजेक्ट मार दी और वो औरत मर गई, खाना नहीं मिला. गेट माय पॉइंट. एथिक्स भी लाइएगा. टेक्नोलॉजी डजंट हैव कंपैशन, टेक्नोलॉजी डजंट हैव इंटेलिजेंस, टेक्नोलॉजी डजंट रियलाइज दैट अगर कोई एक रेप विक्टिम आ रहा है तो उसकी एफआईआर को सबसे ऊपर पहले ट्रीट किया जाए, सबसे ऊपर प्रायोरिटी में रखा जाए. See, for example, you may give example of illustration of that police station may use technology for sorting of FIR, which are the cases which should be treated first. But should it not be the case that जो सबसे गरीब, destitute और सबसे immediate requirement जिनकी है, उन cases को सबसे पहले treat करें हम? Technology may be used for deciding which cases should be lined up in the court first, but it may not realize that POCSO cases must be treated first. Or in POCSO also, cases of those children, those who are belonging to the most, अब देखिए आप टेक्नोलॉजी से थोड़ा बहुत कर सकते हैं, पर अगेन आपको उसको डिजाइन करना पड़ेगा उस तरीके से. डिबेटेबल क्यों है? क्योंकि ह्यूमन इनपुट्स विल डिसाइड हाउ टेक्नोलॉजी विल टेक डिसीजन. देखिए ये होगा आगे जाते हुए 10-20 साल में. AI will be taking decisions. Civil servants will be not required for certain things because technology will do that. नोट बनाना है, नोटिफिकेशन बनाना है, सिविल सर्वेंट क्लर्क क्यों चाहिए? मैं बस टेक्नोलॉजी को बता दूंगा, नोटिफिकेशन बना दे, ये चीजें लिखनी है उसमें, वो बना देगी. ट्रेंड है टेक्नोलॉजी. बट टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ प्रॉब्लम है, वो नहीं समझती डाइवर्सिटी, वो नहीं समझती इक्विटी, वो नहीं समझती कंपैशन. उसमें कौन से इमोशन है? वो नहीं समझती कि जो आदमी सबसे गरीब है उसको सबसे पहले हेल्प करो. और ये आप कैसे डिसाइड करेंगे कि वो आदमी सच्ची में पेन में है? टेक्नोलॉजी तो नहीं देख सकती, वो लिखेगा आई एम इन अ लॉट ऑफ पेन, इससे डिसाइड करेगी वो नहीं. सो टेक्नोलॉजी हैज इट्स लिमिटेशंस. एनीवे, सो एंड मिसयूज ऑफ डेटा, प्राइवेसी कंसर्न्स एक्सेट्रा, आल्सो दोस थिंग्स में आल्सो भी मेंशन, कुछ जीएस के पॉइंट्स भी आप मेंशन कर सकते हैं. इज दैट क्लियर? Right? How you approach this question. Now let's look at next question. An independent and empowered social audit mechanism is an absolute must in every sphere of public service, including judiciary, to ensure performance, accountability and ethical conduct. Very simple question. First you must explain what is social audit. इन क्वेश्चंस में भी अगर आप थोड़ा सा चाहें तो क्रिएटिविटी दिखा सकते हैं. यू मे टॉक अबाउट दैट सोशल ऑडिट इन एमजी नरेगा हेल्प्ड इन अनर्थिंग सो मेनी बोगस कार्ड्स, जॉब कार्ड्स इन द स्टेट ऑफ आंध्र प्रदेश. सोशल ऑडिट रेफर्स टू, एक तरीका है सोशल ऑडिट मींस, अब फिर एग्जांपल दे रहे हैं. दूसरा क्या है, आपने इंस्टेंटली एग्जामिनर की अटेंशन ग्रैब कर ली by talking about application of social audit and the utility of social audit. Again an important thing, है ना? So it says that an independent and empowered social audit mechanism is an absolute must in every sphere of public service. Every sphere of public service. Again focus on the things. So now see, ideally in your answer you must mention that how social audit can help in every sphere of public service. Every sphere. सोचिए कौन से स्फीयर्स हैं पब्लिक सर्विस के. क्या हैं पब्लिक सर्विस के स्फीयर? मे बी लेट्स से हेल्थ सर्विस डिलीवरी कुड बी वन स्फीयर. एक तो आप इस डायमेंशन में सोचते हैं हेल्थ, एजुकेशन एक्सेट्रा, बट देयर आर अदर स्फीयर्स ऑफ पब्लिक सर्विस एज वेल. Policing is public service, right? Policing is public service. Delivery of goods to the citizens, goods and services to the citizens, subsidies to the citizens is public service, right? और क्या हो सकता है? Dimensions, spheres of public service सोचिएगा. उन spheres of public service में एक आधा कोई एग्जाम्पल लिख दीजिएगा और उसके बेसिस पे एक्सप्लेन कर दीजिए सोशल ऑडिट कैसे रिक्वायर्ड है वहां. पुलिसिंग में सोशल ऑडिट क्यों रिक्वायर्ड है, ये लिख दीजिएगा कि केसेस जो पुलिस क्लेम कर रही है हमने सॉल्व किए हैं, उसका सोशल ऑडिट होना चाहिए. लोगों से पूछा जाए कि क्या जेन्युइनली आपका प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हुआ कि नहीं, राइट? गवर्नमेंट इज क्लेमिंग दैट इतनी रोड बना दी या इतने लोगों को टॉयलेट बनवा दिया या बेनिफिशियरीज हो गए उसके अंदर. और क्या हो सकता है सोशल ऑडिट के एस्पेक्ट्स? Prisoners could be one. Very good. Yes, what else? Safe, clean and healthy environment. But थोड़ा broad सोचिए. और मैं बोल रहा हूं policing, subsidy delivery, broad सोचिए. broad dimensions दे दीजिए उसको 3-4. Get the point? Focus on every word in the question and you will yourself find the answer, guys. That is what I am saying from question 1. Including judiciary to ensure performance, accountability and an ethical conduct. So it specifically wants you to focus on judiciary. तो इससे ही क्लू मिल जाएगा कि पुलिसिंग पे फोकस करते हैं, जुडिशरी पे फोकस करते हैं, है ना, लेजिस्लेशन पे फोकस करते हैं, या जो भी है, मतलब व्हाटएवर, है ना, डायरेक्ट बेनिफिट ट्रांसफर पे फोकस करते हैं, सब्सिडी पे फोकस करते हैं, व्हाटएवर. 2-3 ना कुछ भी हो सकता है. 2-3 डायमेंशंस लिया, पिकअप every dimension, थोड़ा explain कर दिया how social audit can help, and in the beginning itself you can mention what are the general advantages of social audit and specifically talk about every sphere and specifically judiciary. और वो यहाँ पे आपको सारे चीजें भी दे दे रहा है, परफॉर्मेंस, इससे परफॉर्मेंस इंप्रूव, तो बता दो परफॉर्मेंस कैसे इंप्रूव होगी, बता दो अकाउंटेबिलिटी कैसे इंश्योर होगी, एथिकल कंडक्ट भी लिखा है, देखिए हाउ जुडिशरी, हाउ द पुलिस treats people, what was their behavior towards people when they went to file FIR. Ethical conduct can also be socially audited. Was the government department enough transparent to put all the data in the public? Can be done through social audit. Was the government department accountable? Was ready to answer questions? Could be determined through or enforced through social audit. So think about it. Please understand again, this is not a governance question. This is a question of ethics in governance. So bring out those aspects of, again, compassion, integrity, dedication to public service. आप ये देख सकते हैं ना, आप देख सकते हैं punctuality, discipline or ethical conduct. You can do a social audit of that. That yes, ये आदमी teacher, education, ये बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है इंडिया में. टीचर एब्सेंटीज्म, टीचर पहुंचते ही नहीं है स्कूल साहब. स्पेशली इन सम ऑफ द रिमोट एरियाज ऑफ द कंट्री, ट्राइबल बेल्ट में यू विल फाइंड टीचर्स आर एब्सेंट. एब्सोल्युटली नो टीचर्स. सालों सालों से टीचर नहीं आए हैं, छुट्टी पे हैं टीचर. एक टीचर आता है, कभी एक कुछ पढ़ा के चले जाता है, उसके बाद गायब. टीचर एब्सेंटीज्म इज अ मेजर प्रॉब्लम. This can be, discipline can be ensured through social audit, right? So talk about all those aspects in your answer, right? So I have mentioned a few things as well, MG Narega, this and that. आप देख लीजिएगा इसको, but I'm just trying to give you a broad dimension. Let's look at some of the other questions as well. We have already kind of reached 8:20, so I'll just quickly wrap this up. Let's look at this. बहुत simple question है. What do you understand by the term good governance? How far recent initiatives in terms of e-governance steps taken by the state have helped the beneficiaries? Discuss with suitable example. Very standard question, right? I don't even think that this is required to be discussed as such. I hope that you people can write the answer to this. इसमें कुछ diagram वगैरह draw कर दीजिएगा, थोड़े बहुत challenges लिख दीजिएगा, but फिर से ethical dimension जरूर लेकर आइएगा answer के अंदर, right? Then whistleblower who report corruption and illegal activities, wrongdoing and misconduct to the concerned authorities run the risk of being exposed to grave danger, physical harm and victimization by the vested interest, accused person and his team. What policy measures would you suggest to strengthen protection mechanism to safeguard the whistleblower? So you must talk about that how the whistleblowers have been facing threat for exposing corruption. You may write about Satyendra Dubey, or you may write about so many RTI activists, or you may talk about HV Manjunath, or so many people. You can talk about how they have been victimized as a result of exposing corruption. And then you must talk about that this, firstly, why protection of whistleblower is important. Because if there is, if people, those who have spoken truth, have been made an example that this is what can happen to you, no one will speak the truth ever. And ultimately, the society will die a slow death. Because we will fail to raise questions over those things which matter to us. And Kennedy once said that the day we stop questioning those things that actually matter with respect to those things which matter to us, that is the day when we start dying. Then what is the point of life? You get the point? So you mentioned that aspect, that why whistleblowers and protection of whistleblowers is ethically important, to encourage more people in future, to encourage truthfulness in the society, to set an example that courage is rewarded and not punished, to promote ethical conduct in this. So importance लिखिएगा ethically, and then what are the measures that need to be taken in order to overcome. इसके ऊपर all question भी आ चुका है, by the way. Last year when this question was asked, there were a number of, there was an article in the Hindu, the lead article. We need to protect the whistleblower. And then it had also mentioned certain suggestions as well. Suggestions ये हैं, आप देख लीजिएगा इसको बाद में, right? You can check this. This was written by Justice Lokur. And वहाँ पे आपको ये, आप इंटरनेट पे सर्च करेंगे, उसी से आर्टिकल पूछ लिया उन्होंने, क्वेश्चन पूछ लिया उन्होंने डायरेक्टली. Ignoring the fact that right to information users are facing death for keeping democracy alive is a threat to democracy itself. Wow, what a line. right? You should mention that. Anyway, so then ये सब कुछ चीजें मैंने लिखी हुई हैं इसमें, आप इसको बाद में देख लीजिएगा. Let's look at this last thing, corporate governance. This is also one important topic which has assumed a lot of significance in the last few years. Let's discuss this question quickly and then call off the class. This one says that in contemporary world, corporate sectors contribution in generating wealth and employment is increasing. In doing so, they are bringing unprecedented onslaught on climate, environmental sustainability, living conditions of human beings. In this background, do you find that CSR is efficient and sufficient? दो चीजें एड्रेस करनी है. क्या ये एफिशिएंट और सफिशिएंट? एफिशिएंट का मतलब क्या ये जेन्युइनली इस प्रॉब्लम को एड्रेस कर पा रहा है, और क्या ये सिर्फ इज दिस एनफ, इज दिस सफिशिएंट एनफ टू fulfill the social roles and responsibilities needed in the corporate world for which the CSR is mandated. So you must first begin by talking about some problems that are created as illustrations due to corporate activity. Then you must talk about that therefore the companies have a responsibility towards the society as well. And CSR essentially means towards society, towards stakeholders, towards employees, towards the environment, towards the country. They have responsibility towards everyone. Then you say that there are number of CSR initiatives that have been taken. कुछ examples दे दीजिएगा. And then you talk about what are some of the problems or why it is not. So you may write down CSR not efficient. लिखिएगा. Why not efficient? Because सिर्फ एक पार्ट ऑफ द कंट्री के अंदर CSR का मेजर फोकस है, सिर्फ हेल्थ और एजुकेशन और लाइवलीहुड के ऊपर CSR का फोकस है. It is not efficient. It is not efficient also because a lot of times companies just spend money but they don't see whether that money is being spent properly or not. Not efficient. All the people are trying to solve the same problem, but no one is able to find the solution to the problem. CSR is also not efficient at times because they are not working along with the government. वो अपनी कुछ धुन में चल रहे हैं, गवर्नमेंट कुछ और कर रही है, आप गवर्नमेंट के एफर्ट्स को सप्लीमेंट कर दीजिएगा. And then it is not sufficient also. You must mention that केवल CSR करने से कंपनीज अपना पल्ला नहीं झाड़ सकती. They have to do much more than that. They have to go beyond that. They have to be ethical in their conduct. They have to be within the company. They must promote good work culture. They must promote good values. They must be environmentally more cautious. Right? They must develop an environment. Of course, they must try to make profits for themselves, but they must also focus on national growth. They must try to align their agenda with that of the government, with that of the nation. Cyber security, for example, आप example दे सकते हैं. So many things can be mentioned here. Again, I have mentioned a few things here. So वही जो मैंने आपको बोला, how CSR helps in fulfilling public good. Example दे दीजिएगा, but CSR is not efficient and sufficient. इसको अलग अलग headings के अंदर आप दे सकते हैं. मैंने बहुत सारे points इसमें mention किए हुए हैं. We have discussed that in the classes as well when we had discussed about the CSR and the problems of CSR or challenges associated with CSR in India, and that should be enough, right? Is that clear to everyone? Any questions or any doubts anyone has? Fine. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being so patient and attending this session, and hopefully you will attend the other sessions as well. You will have a lot to learn, I can tell you that, right? Do attend the other sessions as well if you do have time. I do understand that many of you must be writing mains as well, but even if you can't attend physically, maybe try to attend it from home or whatever, but you will get a lot of understanding. And then attending session is not enough. Go and write answers to these questions now with respect to the discussion that we have had in this session. Thank you so much. Wish you all the best.